Chapter 21. I'll see what she's really up to. It was only 6 months after Chu Zhetian entered Tai Xu Sect. He was still a young man, about 18 or 19. On one of his shifts, he was assigned to guard the gate for an outer sect elder. Murong Ling came to see the elder about something, but the elder was taking his midday rest. He had instructed Chu Zhetian that no one was to disturb him without his permission. So, Chu Zhetian stopped Murong Ling, who knew that she would strike Chu Zhetian with a palm, severely injuring him, and then force her way in. When she and the outer sect elder came out, the elder, after learning what happened, dared not offend Murong Ling, the direct disciple of the White Tiger Peak Master, and instead blamed Chu Zhetian for being blind. Furthermore, he allowed Murong Ling to deal with Chu Zhetian as she wished. Consequently, Murong Ling put a collar on Chu Zhetian's neck and dragged him behind a horse, using him for her amusement and to vent her anger. She dragged him around the entire outer sect territory for a distance of no less than 100 miles. That time, Chu Zhetian was thoroughly humiliated, tortured to the point where he was barely clinging to life. His skin and flesh were completely rubbed away, exposing the bones beneath. He spent the better part of a year recovering before he was barely able to move again. It was plain to see that this Murong Ling was truly fair-faced, but with a heart as venomous as a viper. Of course, countless other disciples from the lower ranks had been bullied by her. Therefore, she simply didn't remember that the outer sect disciple she almost tormented to death back then was the same person who would later become the sect's #1 genius. Even 5 years ago, during the sect's grand competition, she had lost to Chu Zhetian's sword and had given him a pitiful look. And now, she was smiling and approaching him in the same way. If one didn't know her true character, they might genuinely think she was a charming, adorable girl. Junior brother Chu doesn't deserve such praise. I don't seem to know Miss Murong well, Chu Zhetian said without expression. He truly didn't want to engage in superficial pleasantries with this woman. Hearing this, Murong Ling pouted, a look of wronged innocence on her delicate and exquisite face. Cough, cough. Linger, junior brother Chu is shy. He'll warm up to you after some time. At this moment, second senior brother Zhang Wenxuan coughed twice and stepped forward to ease the awkwardness. As he spoke, he subconsciously put his arm around Murong Ling's slender waist. Seeing this, Chu Zhetian's eyebrows raised. Second senior brother, you and her. Zhang Wenxuan let out a ha-ha, and a self-satisfied expression appeared on his face. He beamed and said, Linger and I became Dao companions yesterday. Murong Ling's beauty, while not as exceptional as Su Ruoyan's, was still 1 in 1,000, and she also had the status of a direct disciple of the White Tiger Peak Master. Zhang Wenxuan had been pursuing her. Finally, after his tireless efforts, Murong Ling suddenly and unexpectedly agreed to him yesterday. Therefore, this second senior brother was beaming with joy and feeling very pleased with himself today. Tisich, Dao companions. Those people from the White Tiger Peak have always looked down on our Vermilion Bird Peak, and this Murong Ling has always been very disdainful of second senior brother. I wonder what the catch is in suddenly accepting him, the junior sister muttered quietly. And Chu Zhetian, for the sake of Zhang Wenxuan's face, could only force a smile at Murong Ling and clasped his hands together. Then congratulations to second senior brother and senior sister Murong. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a trace of suspicion flashed deep in his eyes. As far as he knew, in his previous life, this Murong Ling didn't end up with Zhang Wenxuan. Instead, she had that kind of relationship with her senior brother, by Yifei. It seems that because of my rebirth, some things have developed differently from my previous life. And if this Murong Ling isn't sincere about accepting second senior brother, then why is she here? Could it be because of me? Chu Zhetian's thoughts raced, and all sorts of speculations arose. At this moment, Yueyue, standing beside him, looked at Murong Ling, then at her own father. Her clever little mind seemed to realize that her father didn't want to deal with that woman. So, she went over and tugged at Chu Zhetian's big hand, and said in a clear voice, Daddy, didn't you say you'd play with Yueyue too? Chu Zhetian lovingly kissed his daughter, and felt like this little girl had helped him out of a difficult situation. All right, Daddy will play with my Yueyue, Ha ha ha. At this moment, Murong Ling glanced at Chu Zhetian again, and a trace of venomousness flashed across her face. You dog, just you wait. Soon, I'll make sure you have no place to be buried. Killing you will get me the heaven-grade magic treasure that senior brother by promised. I can't disappoint senior brother. Next, the childish scene was repeated. But compared to before, there was one more adult being chased around the yard by Yueyue. After playing for a while, after they stopped, the group sat in the yard and chatted. At this moment, Murong Ling took out a pot of wine and several wine cups from her spatial ring. Wen Xuan, what's the point of just chatting? Junior brother Chu has joined your Vermilion Bird Peak. This is a happy occasion. Why don't we have a few drinks to celebrate? She smiled charmingly, seeming to be a well-mannered lady. She was so unlike the viperous woman who had tormented Chu Zhetian half to death before. Linger is right. Junior brother Chu, shall we have a few drinks? Zhang Wenshuan nodded deeply in agreement and asked Chu Zhetian. All right. Chu Zhetian hesitated for a moment before nodding his head calmly. However, his gaze glanced at the wine pot in Murong Ling's hand. Trying to get me to drink? I'll see what you're really up to. Oh, it's dewdrop brew? Then I must have a few cups. Third senior brother Tang Yitai's eyes lit up, and he smacked his lips. This dewdrop brew was one of the finest spirit wines brewed by the sect's Tai Xu winery. If one were to exchange for it, it would require thousands of spirit jade or sect contributions. The average person couldn't afford to drink it. I want a drink too. I have dried meat to go with it. Hee hee. Xiao Yueyue didn't know where from on her person, took out a packet of dried meat, and placed it on the stone table, smiling. Elder senior brother, your injuries just healed. You shouldn't drink? We're gathering with junior brother Chu for the first time. How could I not drink? My injuries have completely healed. It's no problem. Zhang Dalai laughed heartily. I still have several pots of this dewdrop brew in my spatial ring. I'll make sure you all enjoy it. Murong Ling smiled and said. With that, she filled the wine cups of herself and the 5 others. As the sister-in-law, the wife of a brother, or the sister of a husband of the group, she acted appropriately and with grace. 3 senior brothers and junior sister, please wait a moment. I must first drink this toast. At this moment, Chu Zhetian stopped Zhang Dalai and the other 3. In his heart, he already suspected Murong Ling. Before he was sure of her intentions, how could he let Zhang Dalai and the others casually drink her wine? And himself, in his previous life, had experienced countless intrigues, dangers, and near-death experiences, and had long developed an ability to detect poison. Moreover, according to the world-slaughtering god from the burial god blood domain, the swallowing heavenly saint body was immune to all poisons. Let him test the wine first. With that, Chu Zhetian picked up his cup and sniffed it. Truly worthy of being dewdrop brew. Fine wine. In the next second, he pretended to enjoy it and took another deep sniff, and then drank it all down. However, deep in his eyes, a hint of cold light arose. Sealing immortal powder? Indeed. This woman has bad intentions. Chapter 22. Chu Zhetian, drunk and out of control? When he sniffed the first time, Chu Zhetian felt the toxin evaporating, entering his body through his nasal passages. Sealing immortal powder was a very insidious poison. It was colorless and tasteless, making it impossible to defend against. After being poisoned, one would become weak and fall into a coma, thus becoming fish on the chopping block. But surprisingly, this poison, entering Chu Zhetian's body, was directly neutralized, and it transformed into a small amount of energy. The swallowing heavenly saint body is not only immune to all poisons, it can even transform them. Although the energy transformed by this is negligible to the body's improvement, it's equal to neutralizing the poison. This can be considered a hidden ability of the swallowing heavenly saint body. Truly worthy of the word, swallowing heavenly. Chu Zhetian thought to himself, because this sealing immortal powder, though insidious, wouldn't directly harm a person. After the coma, they would naturally wake up. Therefore, Chu Zhetian didn't stop Zhang Dalai and the others from drinking. Next, the disciples began to drink and make merry. Yueyue, the little girl, sat beside her father, eating the dried meat from her junior martial uncle Xiao Yueyue, while feeding her father wine. "Daddy, drink wine." Seeing her daughter's small hand holding the wine cup, reaching towards his mouth, Chu Zhetian quickly opened his mouth. After drinking, he also very much the daughter-loving type, kissed the back of Yueyue's little hand. This caused the little girl to let out a burst of silver bell-like laughter, happily revealing her two little dimples. "Yueyue, third martial uncle wants you to feed him too." Chang'e Tai, with a face of envy, teased Yueyue. "Martial uncle, drink wine." The little girl was not at all ambiguous, and also fed this guy a cup. In a short while, after a few cups of wine, whether it was because the dewdrop brew was too strong, or for other reasons, everyone started to look drunk. "Junior brother Chu, does my wine taste good?" At this moment, Murong Ling, while refilling Chu Zhetian's wine, asked with a smile. "It's absolutely amazing." Chu Zhetian drank another cup and smacked his lips. His speech was slurred, and he was barely able to speak clearly. Seeing this, a hint of malice flashed deep in Murong Ling's eyes. "Amazing? In a moment, I'll make you beautiful to death. Junior brother Chu, you don't know how amazing the girls in the 100 Flowers Pavilion are. What's the point of drinking like this? To let those girls feed you mouth to mouth, that's what's really sweet. I must take you to enjoy it when I have a chance." "Hick, pooh." Zhang Wenxuan spoke without restraint. Chu Zhetian also swayed slightly, as if he would fall over at any moment, and muttered in his mouth, "Second senior brother, be careful. Senior sister Murong is still here." "Zhang Wenxuan, you womanizer. Open your mouth. I'm going to let you taste whether the wine I feed you is sweeter, or the sweet taste of those dusty, flirtatious women." At this moment, Murong Ling scolded Zhang Wenxuan, pinching his mouth open. In the next second, she fed him a sip of wine mouth to mouth, causing this second senior brother to look like he had lost his soul. Seeing this scene of dog-feeding, showing affection, Chang'e Tai and Xiao Yueyue made noises of disapproval. Murong Ling appeared shy on the surface, but a look of disgust flashed in her eyes. However, in order to carry out the next plan, she could only let Zhang Wenxuan take advantage of the situation. Before feeding him this mouthful of wine, she had hidden the antidote for the sealing immortal powder in her mouth. Because next, she would need a witness, and more importantly, a knife. Being able to kill with a borrowed knife would be the best. So Zhang Wenxuan needed to wake up at the right time. "Junior brother Chu, it is said that you are the #1 genius of the sect, coming to our Vermilion Bird Peak. Isn't it a pity? We here are all about lying around. The master doesn't care about our cultivation at all. You, too, will become a salted fish, you know?" After Chang'e Tai harumphed, he put his arm around Chu Zhetian's shoulder and shook his head. "Junior brother, do you want to eat dried meat?" Xiao Yueyue also took out the dried meat from her mouth and stuffed it into Chu Zhetian's mouth. Plop. And Zhang Dalai wanted to say something, but just raised his hand and immediately fell over. Plop, plop, plop. Following that, Xiao Yueyue and the other three also collapsed and fell asleep. Chu Zhetian also fell onto the stone table with a thud, as if he had drunk himself unconscious. But only he knew that he was more sober than anyone else. At this moment, seeing everyone falling down, a look of triumph appeared on Murong Ling's face, and Yueyue's voice, with a hint of concern, sounded, "Daddy, martial uncle, what happened to you guys?" "It's okay, they're just drunk." Murong Ling smiled. Yueyue looked at her, blinked her big eyes, and asked innocently and with confusion, "Senior martial aunt, why aren't you drunk?" "Because senior martial aunt didn't drink much," Murong Ling explained with a straight face. "Oh." Yueyue nodded her little head and didn't think too much about it. She looked at her drunken father and went over to pull on her father's arm. She was going to pull her father up and carry him back to the room. Daddy and the martial uncles were all drunk. They couldn't possibly let them sleep on the ground outside, could they? "Yueyue, don't worry about Daddy. First help your several martial uncles into the room." At this moment, Chu Zhetian muttered unclearly. Oh. Yueyue agreed, first pulling Xiao Yueyue from the ground, and then carried her, dragging her into the room. Don't underestimate the little girl. She didn't look big, but her strength was not small. Next, a very incongruous scene appeared. A group of adults were dead drunk, and only a little girl was left to clean up the mess. That small body seemed to contain great strength. She carried and dragged the several martial uncles into the room. Her face, made of porcelain, flushed time and time again. Yueyue is so great. Put your elder martial uncle down and take a rest. Martial aunt will help your daddy. Judging that the time was right, Murong Ling called out to the room. In the next second, she looked at Chu Zhetian, and a murderous intent surfaced on her face. Hiss. Next, she tore her clothes directly, revealing her undergarments. That glimpse of cleavage and the eye-catching whiteness were exposed to the air. Ah! Murong Ling let out a scream. Her voice seemed to contain a deep sense of shame. Murong Ling, what are you doing? Chu Zhetian raised his head and asked, pretending to be drunk. What am I doing? You, the shameless scoundrel, actually got drunk and lost control, and wanted to take advantage of me. How am I supposed to face people from now on? How can I face your second senior brother? Wah wah wah. Zhang Wenxuan, come out. See what your junior brother has done. Murong Ling covered her chest with one hand, and pointed at Chu Zhetian with the other, and angrily scolded. Her pretty face was filled with frost, and her eyes were filled with tears. She seemed to be truly, having been insulted. Tap tap tap. Following her screams and shouts, a sound of hurried and stumbling footsteps was heard. Zhang Wenxuan, who had just woken up because of the antidote and was still a bit muddled, rushed out when he heard the sound. What's going on? Linger, what are you doing? In the next second, seeing Murong Ling's scantily clad appearance, Zhang Wenxuan asked with a look of surprise. His eyes instinctively took a good long look at that expanse of white. Murong Ling had only accepted him yesterday, and he hadn't even tasted the sweetness. Chu Zhetian. This beast got drunk. I was kind enough to help him into the room, but took advantage of his drunkenness to try to do something to me. Zhang Wenxuan, kill him for me. Murong Ling pointed at Chu Zhetian and said with extreme shame and indignation. Chapter 23. You're quite the actress, aren't you? Ah. You mean, junior brother Chu assaulted you? Misunderstanding. It must be a misunderstanding. A person's drinking habits reflect their character. Looking at junior brother Chu's drinking, you know his character must be fine. Zhang Wenxuan finally managed to move his gaze away from the expanse of white that Murong Ling had revealed. Then, he waved his hands again and again to dissuade her. Hearing this, a look of surprise flashed across Murong Ling's face. She had expected Zhang Wenxuan to fly into a rage. He had pursued her for so long. So in Murong Ling's eyes, Zhang Wenxuan was her lapdog. When the goddess suffered such an insult, wouldn't the lapdog howl and tear Chu Zhetian apart? Especially now, drunk. With his mind not yet clear, he should have been on the verge of losing control. After being guided and incited by her, he should have fought with Chu Zhetian, and in a fit of anger, killed him. But she hadn't expected Zhang Wenxuan to be so rational? Misunderstanding? I'm like this, and you still say it's a misunderstanding? If you don't kill him today, I won't have the face to live anymore. Murong Ling covered her chest, and her face was full of grief and indignation. Not necessary, not necessary. Hasn't anything happened yet? Misunderstanding. It must be a misunderstanding. Zhang Wenxuan hiccuped again and again, waving his hands again and again to dissuade her. Murong Ling was so angry her face flushed red. In the next second, she nodded and said angrily, All right, you won't help me, right? Then I'll kill him myself. Today, I must use the blood of Chu Zhetian, this dog thief, to wash away the shame he brought me. With that, she was about to attack Chu Zhetian. In order to complete the task given to her by senior brother Bai, in order to obtain that heaven-grade magic treasure, failing to kill with a borrowed knife, she could only do it herself. Fortunately, Zhang Wenxuan, the useless one, could at least be considered a witness. However, she had only taken a step forward when Zhang Wenxuan embraced her waist from behind. Linger, don't be impulsive. Misunderstanding. Junior brother Chu, run quickly. Run quickly. This second senior brother, while restraining Murong Ling, yelled urgently at Chu Zhetian. The entire Tai Xu Sect knew that Chu Zhetian had previously crippled his cultivation. Even if he had survived the blood prison demon cave, his strength certainly hadn't recovered. It was feared that Murong Ling would cut him down with a single strike. However, Chu Zhetian still stood there, not moving a step. Seeing Zhang Wenxuan's trust and protection of himself, a hint of mixed feelings and emotion flashed in his eyes. And in the next second, his gaze towards Murong Ling was full of ridicule and coldness. Murong Ling, you're quite the actress, aren't you? To kill me, you've really put in a lot of effort. He couldn't fail to see that Murong Ling wanted to kill him reasonably, without being punished by the discipline hall and other high-ranking members of the sect, so she had designed this act. He had drunk too much, lost control, and assaulted her, and she, for the sake of her reputation, killed him in a fit of anger. It was truly only right and proper. Act what? I don't know what you're talking about. Murong Ling's eyes flickered a few times, and she still shouted with a look of grief and indignation. Zhang Wenxuan, you bastard! You wouldn't stand up for me, and you're even protecting this beast. Get away from me. As her voice fell, a huge force suddenly surged from her body. As one of the direct disciples of the White Tiger Peak Master, Murong Ling's strength had reached the 8th stage of the Hotian realm, and Zhang Wenxuan, living on the lying down peak, and enjoying eating, drinking, and playing, only had the peak of the 9th stage of the Zhoutian realm. With this disparity in strength, it was estimated that even if they were truly in a relationship, Zhang Wenxuan would be the one on the bottom. Therefore, faced with Murong Ling's outburst, Zhang Wenxuan had no ability to resist. He was directly shaken and flew away. With a thud. After landing, Zhang Wenxuan, whose mind was already muddled, immediately rolled his eyes and lost consciousness again. Second senior brother. Chu Zhetian's face tightened. However, he felt that Zhang Wenxuan had only fainted, and he finally breathed a sigh of relief. In the next second, he looked coldly at Murong Ling. Why do you want to kill me? Who sent you? Murong Ling snorted coldly. Why should I kill you? Isn't it obvious? Of course, it's for my own reputation. Hearing this, Chu Zhetian smiled with disdain. But before he could say anything, another cold female voice, full of disgust, suddenly sounded. Chu Zhetian, I didn't expect you to be so useless now. Just a few days after we separated, you're already craving women like this? You really disgust me. Looking towards the sound, it was Su Ruoyan who had come over at some unknown time. On her delicate face, besides contempt, she also carried a hint of anger. This hateful man, as soon as he separated from her, couldn't wait to covet other women? It was simply outrageous. If this damn man still had some use, she would definitely turn around and leave. Chu Zhetian looked towards the sound, and seeing it was her, he was stunned for a moment. However, he didn't bother to pay any attention, and Su Ruoyan, seeing that he had only glanced at her faintly, and then turned his head and ignored her, immediately ground her teeth in anger. Chu Zhetian, I'm talking to you. Don't you give me an explanation? This time, Chu Zhetian finally gave her a few seconds more, with an expression as if he was looking at an idiot. Whenever he was told to give her an explanation, was this woman a little bit mentally unstable? Not to mention that he hadn't done anything with Murong Ling at all, even if he had. What did that have to do with her, Su Ruoyan? Murong Ling also glanced at Su Ruoyan. She was delighted to see her appear. With her appearing, there was one more person to bear witness for her. She just hoped that the other person wouldn't interfere too much. She heard that this daughter of the Azure Dragon Peak Master had just been divorced by Chu Zhetian and shouldn't help this man. Chu Zhetian, prepare to die. Only with your blood can the insult you gave me be washed away. Murong Ling shouted with grief and indignation. Her killing intent was strong. The aura of the 8th stage of the Hotian realm immediately spread out. Tap, 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 tap. But just then, a small figure ran over quickly and opened her arms to block in front of Chu Zhetian. Don't hurt my daddy. Yueyue saw it just now. You're lying. You tore your own clothes. You're framing my daddy. Yueye's small face was filled with great anger, staring at Murong Ling and not giving an inch. The aura around her body was unstable again. It seemed that whenever it involved her daddy's safety, this little girl would be at risk of demonization. It could be seen how much Yueyue cared about her daddy. You little brat, you're helping your daddy to twist the truth at such a young age. And you're also a demonic seed. Keeping you in this world is also a disaster. Murong Ling said, ruthless look appearing on her face. She struck a palm towards Yueyue. Her spiritual power burst out of her body and immediately turned into a palm print, directly heading for Yueye's head. It was obvious that she wanted to kill and silence her. Yueyue was only a child, facing the attack of a strong expert of the 8th stage of the Hotian realm. She would be instantly killed without any suspense. But just then, a tall and upright figure instantly stood in front of that small body. Plop! Along with a dull thud, the palm print struck Chu Zhetian's thigh hard. However, the body, as if cast in bronze and iron, still stood there without moving an inch. It was as if it had only been brushed by a gentle breeze. Seeing this scene, Murong Ling's expression was startled. Chu Zhetian had actually withstood her attack and was unscathed? You just now wanted to kill my daughter? And in the next second, a voice filled with boundless killing intent rang out. It was as if the air in the entire courtyard was about to freeze. Chapter 24. Do you remember that boy you tortured? Daddy! Daddy, are you all right? Seeing his father block that palm strike for her, Yueyue cried out anxiously. Chu Zhetian turned, and the anger on his face was replaced by a smile. Daddy is fine. Yueyue, be good. Drag your second martial uncle into the room first, and then watch Daddy beat the bad guy from a safe distance. Although he wanted to cherish his daughter above all else, Chu Zhetian also wanted her to see the harshness of the world. Yueyue nodded her head, instead looking rather excited and invigorated. Beat the bad guy. Beat the bad guy. Clearly, the bumps and bruises of growing up had made the little girl's spirit less fragile than her appearance suggested. Murong Ling's voice, full of arrogance, rang out. What? You, a useless person whose cultivation is completely gone, possessing only a little bit of physical strength, you still think you can kill me? Clang. As she spoke, a pair of daggers materialized in her hands, and she pointed the blades directly at Chu Zhetian, saying, I'd like to see if you can withstand my blade after withstanding my palm strike. You shameless scoundrel, and the daughter you bore is also a demonic seed. You father and daughter, you both deserve to die. A cruel arc formed on Chu Zhetian's lips. All right, then you can go and die. At this moment, Ruoyan, with her own agenda, jumped out, saying, Chu Zhetian, do you still think you are the innate expert from before? Are you still thinking of fighting her head-on? Her tone took on a note of arrogance. Like this, if you want to save your life and your daughter's life, agree to go back with me. I can forget the past and even help you block Murong Ling. What do you say? Chu Zhetian, hearing this, didn't even glance at her. He stomped his foot, and a long sword similarly materialized in his hand. He then charged towards Murong Ling. This sword was named Rift Sky, and it had been personally bestowed by Sect Master Yu after he led the army to annihilate 10,000 Demon Manor. It was a high-grade treasure sword of the Xin grade. The hilt was a foot long, carved with animal patterns. The blade was as wide as 4 fingers. The whole sword looked like it lacked the agility and grace of an ordinary longsword, and instead possessed a few more points of weight and dominance. This point was very consistent with Chu Zhetian's liking. Before, the second elder had forced Su Hongtu to return his spatial ring, so this treasure sword naturally returned to his hands. Looking for death. Murong Ling, seeing this, met him with her twin daggers. A dog of a man who doesn't know what's good for him. And Ruoyan, seeing that Chu Zhetian was ignoring her, stamped her foot in anger and gritted her teeth as she cursed. Ding! The next instant, accompanied by the sound of metal clashing, Ling actually let out a muffled groan and took 2 steps back. In contrast, Chu Zhetian not only didn't retreat, but charged forward again. He was completely unaffected by the aftershock of the attack. How is this possible? You clearly don't have any spiritual energy fluctuations. How could the power of your strike be so strong? Ling widened her eyes, her face filled with disbelief. Chu Zhetian didn't speak, and continued to attack her of his own accord. The other party's feeling was right. He truly didn't mobilize his spiritual energy because he wanted to test the extent of his pure physical combat power. It seemed that there was no problem overwhelming the 8th level of the Hotian realm. Chu Zhetian didn't feel the slightest bit of pressure when dealing with Ling. Ding, ding, ding. Chu Zhetian kept attacking madly, while Ling could only defend passively. That violent power made this woman almost unable to breathe. After a few moves, the tiger's mouths of both of Ling's hands were split open, and blood was dripping down. Ding! Another heavy horizontal slash sent Ling's daggers flying out of her hands. Her delicate and exquisite face was already distorted with panic and shock. Junior brother Chu, stop. Misunderstanding. Listen to me. At this point, no matter how unbelievable she found it, she realized that she was not Chu Zhetian's opponent. Even if the other party's cultivation was lost, and he only relied on his physical strength, he could still crush her. All right, then speak. Who sent you? Chu Zhetian's movements paused slightly, and he demanded in a cold voice. He knew that this Ling couldn't have harmed him for no reason. Someone must have instructed her. Hearing him ask this, Ling's eyes immediately flickered. No, no one. I just had bad feelings because of your poor attitude towards me when we first met, so I had a moment of malice. Although I was shouting that I wanted to kill you, it was actually just to teach you a lesson. But now I know that I was wrong. I apologize. Chu Zhetian sneered. Do you think I'll believe that? Not going to say it, huh? Then keep it to tell the king of hell. Even on the verge of death, she still wasn't being honest. And the other party not only had malicious intent to harm him, but even wanted to kill Yueyue. How could he spare her? At this time, Chu Zhetian turned to Yueyue and said, Baby, you must remember, when facing enemies, you must never be soft-hearted. Yueyue nodded her head, as if she understood. Yueyue remembers. The next second, Chu Zhetian slashed his sword towards Ling's throat. Ling's face changed drastically, and she hurriedly dodged. The tip of the sword, by a hair's breadth, brushed past her neck and pierced past. But before Ling could catch her breath, the sound of a sonic boom appeared. Chu Zhetian then followed with a punch, which heavily struck her in the chest. Compared to the time he had ambushed Su Ruoyan, Chu Zhetian's physical body had been elevated to another level. The power of this punch was a full 100,000 pounds. Boom. Crack. Accompanying the sound of a thunderous collision, and the crisp sound of the sternum breaking, Ling's body flew backward. After landing with a wah, she spat out a large mouthful of fresh blood. Among it were also the fragments of internal organs. Swish. Chu Zhetian flashed to Ling's side. He stomped heavily on the other party's chest with another kick. Puff. Ling felt as if her internal organs were all shattered. Spare my life? Chu Zhetian, you can't kill me? Ling's eyes were filled with fear, and she used her last ounce of strength to beg for mercy. You could kill me. Why can't I kill you? Chu Zhetian sneered in response. He then leaned down and asked the other party in a low voice, Do you remember the outer sect disciple who was dragged by your horse 7 years ago, almost tortured to death? Hearing this, Ling widened her eyes, revealing a look of surprise. It seemed that before she died, certain memories were stirred up. Is it you? Chu Zhetian nodded and said sternly, That's right, it's me. With that, he pressed the tip of his sword against Ling's heart. Don't worry, I'm more merciful than you. I'll give you a quick death. Ling, hearing this, revealed boundless fear and unwillingness on her face. No, I was wrong. At the same time, a voice of extreme urgency also sounded at this crucial moment. Chu Zhetian, stop! The tip of Rift Sky still pierced Murong Ling's heart mercilessly. Ignoring Murong Ling's plea for mercy and not paying any attention to that urgent shout, Murong Ling widened her eyes, which were filled with deep hatred and unwillingness. The next second, she lost her life completely. At this time, Yueyue was a little afraid, but she looked at this scene bravely. She clenched her little fists to relieve the tension in her heart. Daddy killed someone. But the little girl knew that Daddy was killing a bad person, so she didn't cry or make a fuss to disturb her daddy. And Su Ruoyan stood there, her expression shocked. Chu Zhetian just killed Murong Ling, relying solely on his physical strength and crushing the 8th stage of the Hotian realm? Before, when she was held hostage by Chu Zhetian, Su Ruoyan had always thought that the other party was just taking advantage of the ambush. Now it seemed, Su Ruoyan, do you think I need your help? Chu Zhetian turned his head and finally spoke to Su Ruoyan. But these words made her face flush, and her resentment was exceptional. At this moment, a voice filled with gnashing teeth rang out, carrying boundless anger and venom. Chu Zhetian, you dare kill my junior martial sister. Chapter 25. The boy you tormented must die. A one-eyed young man appeared before Murong Ling's death. He tried to stop Chu Zhetian from killing. It was the head disciple of White Tiger Peak by Yifei. However, Chu Zhetian, still in front of him, pierced Murong Ling's heart with a sword. Looking at the body of his junior martial sister lying there, Bai Yifei was enraged to the extreme. However, facing the other party's question, Chu Zhetian sneered, "What is there that I dare not do?" At this time, after killing Murong Ling, a vertical eye, invisible to others, suddenly appeared on his forehead. The pupil of the vertical eye was a scarlet color, and there was also a blood-colored vortex constantly rotating inside. Eerie and mysterious. It was the blood wheel eye, formed by the burial god blood domain. Strands of flesh and blood essence emanated from Murong Ling's corpse and were absorbed into the blood wheel eye. Chu Zhetian felt a stream of warmth entering his body, which gave his physical body another improvement. Indeed, through killing, I can strengthen my physical body, Chu Zhetian thought to himself. The feeling of his body being strengthened and nourished made him feel extremely comfortable all over. I've already told you to stop. You can't hear me? Bai Yifei said in a cold voice. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Hearing this, Chu Zhetian laughed. He laughed with extreme disdain. You want me to stop, so I'll stop? Who do you think you are? Speaking of this, Chu Zhetian's tone became a few points more severe. If I'm not mistaken, it was you who instructed Murong Ling to kill me, right? He sent someone to kill him, and now he was questioning why he killed someone? Truly ridiculous. As the saying goes, enemies see each other, their eyes are especially red. Not only did Bai Yifei hate Chu Zhetian to the bone, Chu Zhetian was also filled with killing intent towards him. It was this beast, with a human face and a beast's heart, and a twisted perversion, that in his previous life, in order to take revenge on him, had captured Yueyue to White Tiger Peak and imprisoned her in his underground secret chamber. Fortunately, he, as a father, didn't completely disregard his daughter. On the 3rd day after Yueyue went missing, he finally found her. But when he found that underground secret chamber, Yueyue had already been tortured to the point of being covered in wounds. Even then, Bai Yifei was about to inflict the final act of harm on his daughter. If he had come even one step later, Yueyue would have been. So in this life, when Chu Zhetian saw Bai Yifei again, boundless killing intent surged in his eyes. Even if some things hadn't happened yet, he wanted to tear this beast to shreds. Chu Zhetian, you had designs on my junior martial sister, and you harmed her when you didn't succeed. I, today, will tear you to shreds to set things right. Facing Chu Zhetian, Bai Yifei's one eye also revealed a deep venom. With that, he glanced in Yueyue's direction, and a cruel and evil expression appeared on his face. That's right, before killing you, I'll first cut off your limbs, and then chop your daughter into minced meat in front of you. I want you to know the consequences of killing my junior martial sister. Ha 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 ha. In the end, he let out a series of ferocious laughter from his mouth. Chu Zhetian, hearing this, his eyes spewed killing intent. Then you can also go down and keep your junior martial sister company. Bai Yifei immediately let out a more frantic laugh. Just you? Buzz. The next second, a powerful aura suddenly erupted from his body. Innate? Su Ruoyan, who was watching, exclaimed. Chu Zhetian's eyes narrowed. Bai Yifei, had he broken through to the innate realm? He didn't know if his physical body could contend against the innate realm. If he couldn't, he wouldn't be late in mobilizing his spiritual energy. He wasn't afraid at all. However, at this time, Bai Yifei thought that he could do whatever he wanted to Chu Zhetian after breaking through to the first level of the innate realm. That's right. I've already broken through to the innate realm. The innate realm is nothing like the 8th stage of the Hotian realm, or even the peak of the 9th stage. Chu Zhetian, you dog, with that little bit of physical strength, you could only harm my junior martial sister, but in front of an innate realm expert, you are just a joke? Be sensible. Kneel down and kill yourself. Perhaps, I might still consider sparing this little brat and keeping her as a pet. And Su Ruoyan's eyes flickered a few times, and she said urgently to Chu Zhetian, Chu Zhetian, I'll give you another chance, as long as you agree to go back with me to Azure Dragon Peak. I can temporarily hold off Bai Yifei for you. He doesn't dare to kill me, and you can take your daughter and escape. Chu Zhetian frowned secretly. This woman appeared again, and she also wanted to take the opportunity to threaten him to return to Azure Dragon Peak. Hee, truly ridiculous. A wave of disgust surged in his heart. Can you just get lost? Chu Zhetian cursed without any good manners. The next second, he charged directly towards Bai Yifei. The latter, seeing this, revealed a look of surprise and anger. He didn't seem to have expected Chu Zhetian to take the initiative to attack. Looking for death, Bai Yifei raised his sword to meet him. The power of an innate realm expert permeated the scene. At this moment, Su Ruoyan's face alternated between red and white with anger. This man, who had once been subservient and obedient to her, had now told her to get lost? She had already lowered her posture to come and win him back, but this wretched man still didn't know what was good for him. Shouldn't he be happily returning to her side and wagging his tail to beg for mercy? Why did he tell her to get lost? Why? Chu Zhetian, go and die. At this moment, Su Ruoyan couldn't wait to skin Chu Zhetian alive, to cut open his heart and see if it was black or white. Die. Be torn to shreds by Bai Yifei. Su Ruoyan cursed fiercely in her heart. Anyway, according to their plan, Chu Zhetian was dead, and they could still seize his myriad transformation spirit root. However, she was destined to be disappointed, and she was once again shocked. Ding, ding, ding. The rift sky continuously collided with the 3-foot greensword in Bai Yifei's hand. For a while, they were evenly matched. Even relying solely on his physical strength, Chu Zhetian was not at a disadvantage. How is this possible? How could this wretched man's physical strength be so strong? What exactly did he experience in the blood prison demon cave? Su Ruoyan widened her eyes and couldn't say what feeling it was. She even felt like she was a clown. It turned out that Chu Zhetian didn't need her help at all. He didn't need it when facing Morong Ling. He didn't need it either when facing Bai Yifei in the innate realm. Daddy, go, go. And Yueyue clenched her small fists, waving them, and transformed into her daddy's cheerleader. As for Bai Yifei, who was in the midst of the battle, was even more shocked beyond measure. Chu Zhetian, what evil technique have you cultivated? Why is your physical strength so exaggerated? Hearing this, Chu Zhetian smiled with disdain. To deal with you, do I even need an evil technique? You're not worthy. As he spoke, he secretly frowned. It seemed that the initial physical strength of the swallowing heavenly saint body was not too different from an innate realm expert. Although it was already very heaven-defying, it was still a bit difficult to kill Bai Yifei. Then, he would slightly reveal a bit. The next second, Chu Zhetian's aura suddenly increased by a notch. A fluctuation of spiritual energy unexpectedly appeared on his body. This sudden change immediately caught Bai Yifei off guard. An opponent who had originally been evenly matched suddenly increased their attack power from 100,000 pounds to 150,000 pounds. Anyone would be unable to react to this. And even if they reacted, how could they resist? Thus, the balance of battle was instantly broken. Accompanied by the sound of a blade piercing flesh, Chu Zhetian's sword knocked away Bai Yifei's weapon. Then, he followed up with an unstoppable attack, mercilessly cutting at his left arm. An arm immediately flew off. Bai Yifei's left arm was severed at the root, and blood shot out like a fountain. Thud, thud, thud. He retreated 3 steps, and his face instantly turned pale. How is this possible? Weren't you out of cultivation? Why do you still possess the strength of the Hotian realm? Bai Yifei asked in a shocked voice, his voice already changing tone. And Su Ruoyan's mouth was slightly open. Her face was filled with horror. The first level of the Hotian realm. He was out of cultivation yesterday, and the next day he was in the first level of the Hotian realm? How is this possible? Just how monstrous is he? That was right. Chu Zhetian suppressed his qi refining strength to the first level of the Hotian realm and directly broke the balance of battle, severely injuring Bai Yifei with a single sword. And Yueyue, who had always been worried about her daddy, a smile appeared on her small face. Daddy, you are so awesome. Daddy, come on. The little girl didn't know what Hotian or innate was. She only knew that Daddy had one. All right, Daddy is listening to you, baby. Chu Zhetian smiled and nodded at Yueyue. His face turned a cold killing intent. His daughter had told him to come on. He couldn't let go of Bai Yifei. Stop. You dare, wretch. At this moment, an extremely furious voice rang out from over 1,000 meters away. Chapter 26. In front of me, kill my son. Chu Zhetian's eyes narrowed, and he looked towards the sound. He saw a spirit crane flying towards them. Sitting on its back was a person. It was Bai Yifei's father, White Tiger Peak Master Bai Pengju. Bai Yifei seemed to have seen a life-saving straw and shouted urgently, "Father, save me!" With that, he endured his left arm injury and was about to rush in Bai Pengju's direction. Run? However, accompanied by a cold smile, Chu Zhetian attacked again. He didn't hold back at all because of the White Tiger Peak Master's arrival. After being crippled in one arm and already being a spent force, Bai Yifei barely raised his sword to block. Chu Zhetian directly knocked it away, and his left leg, as if it was a battle axe, fiercely swept towards Bai Yifei. 200,000 pounds of force exploded, sweeping the other party away. Crack. Then, at the moment Bai Yifei landed, a foot was heavily stepped on his back. This foot directly crushed Bai Yifei's spine. The other party screamed in pain, writhing under Chu Zhetian's foot like a maggot, but he could no longer escape. Swoosh. At this moment, Bai Pengju had already arrived. Before the spirit crane had landed, he jumped off in his anxiety and landed in the courtyard. Chu Zhetian, you're looking for death. Bai Pengju looked at his son's miserable state, and his eyes were about to split. Su Ruoyan beside him was also shocked by Chu Zhetian's ruthlessness. She hadn't expected that even after the White Tiger Peak Master had spoken, Chu Zhetian would still be so ruthless to Bai Yifei. And Yueyue, seeing the person coming, was very clever and quickly ran behind her father. The little girl also knew that she was her father's weakness and couldn't fall into the hands of outsiders to avoid implicating her father. Father, save me. Bai Yifei was lying there, looking miserable. He desperately stretched out his right arm and cried out in pain for help. Release my son, or I'll tear you to shreds. Bai Pengju shouted in a cold, angry voice. Your son was also saying that just now. Chu Zhetian sneered and raised his sword, slashing towards Bai Yifei's neck. Stop, you dare. Bai Pengju's eyes widened, and he let out an urgent, angry roar. Chu Zhetian, don't. Su Ruoyan was also horrified and shouted out to stop him. Once Bai Yifei died, There would be no room for maneuver. However, in the next instant, the rift sky sword still fell without hesitation. A good head immediately rolled away. Fresh blood gushed out. Yifei. At this moment, the corners of Bai Pengju's eyes were about to split. He let out a cry, like he was losing a parent. Su Ruoyan's lips also trembled a little. Looking at Chu Zhetian's eyes, it was as if she was looking at a complete lunatic. Killed. Chu Zhetian killed people. Murong Ling died under his sword, and Bai Yifei was beheaded by him right in front of the White Tiger Peak Master. How did he dare? And at this time, Chu Zhetian once again felt strands of warmth entering his body, allowing his physical body to be strengthened once again. It was a part of the flesh and blood essence from Bai Yifei's corpse, which was automatically absorbed by the blood wheel eye. Chu Zhetian, this venerable has already arrived to stop you, and you still dare to ignore this venerable and kill my son. You lunatic. You beast. The White Tiger Peak Master was filled with a soaring aura of rage, and he roared, gritting his teeth. That kind of grief from losing a son made him almost crazy. Chu Zhetian sneered in his heart. He had killed the small, and now the large had come. If he killed the large, the old one would come. Bai Pengju could arrive at this time. Wasn't it that he knew long ago that his son and his female disciple were coming to Zhu Ke Peak to find trouble for him? Even if he wasn't the mastermind, he was also turning a blind eye, secretly condoning it. It was good now that his son was weaker than the other party and died, so he showed this bird's appearance. What had he been doing? And thinking of the other party's various condoning of Bai Yifei, why didn't Chu Zhetian want to also kill this White Tiger Peak Master with a sword? His son was such a beast, and how could he, as a father, be any better? In the previous life, when he arrived at that underground secret chamber, it wasn't just Yueyue who was covered in wounds, but also more than a dozen other little girls. It was conceivable that Bai Yifei had harmed many young girls. Would Bai Pengju, as the father, not know anything about all this? And in the previous life, because of the strong protection of Bai Pengju and his wife, Zhong Wanlin, the matter of Bai Yifei harming Yueyue was brushed over lightly. It was only handled with a symbolic month of reflection on the wall. Of course, it was also because Chu Zhetian, as a father, had not fought hard to the end for Yueyue in his previous life. But this life, it would definitely not be the case. He must make their family pay the price they deserved. White Peak Master, I dare to ask, if someone were to chop your son into minced meat, what would you do? Facing Bai Pengju, who was full of rage, Chu Zhetian asked, not backing down at all. I will certainly tear him to shreds and grind him to ashes. Bai Pengju said in a stern voice, his eyes were red. That's right. Bai Yifei not only wanted to tear me to shreds, but also threatened to chop my daughter into minced meat. I killed him. Isn't that only right and proper? Do you only allow your son to kill others, and not allow others to kill him in return? Chu Zhetian had a blank expression. Little Chu Zhetian, you're looking for death. Bai Pengju was already furious. As his voice fell, he held his knife and charged towards Chu Zhetian. The killing intent flowing out of his eyes was about to materialize. The might of a mixed Yuan 6th level expert soared into the sky. Yueyue, go inside. Chu Zhetian's pupil shrank slightly. His face revealed a trace of caution. Also, with a raging fighting spirit. Mixed Yuan expert, huh? He would test it out, with a full battle, whether he could contend against a mixed Yuan expert. Ding. However, at this crucial moment, a figure suddenly appeared and helped Chu Zhetian to block Bai Pengju's knife. It was none other than Zhu Ke Peak Master, Xiao. Looking at that graceful figure that appeared in time, Chu Zhetian suspected if she was secretly observing him. Before, Murong Ling and Bai Yifei couldn't threaten him, so Xiao didn't make a move. But now, facing Bai Pengju in the mixed Yuan realm, she was worried that he was in danger, so she appeared in time. Thinking of this possibility, Chu Zhetian felt a trace of warmth and emotion in his heart. Compared to Su Hongtu, his former master, only Xiao made him feel the importance and care from a master. Xiao, get out of my way. Today, I will kill Chu Zhetian to avenge my son. Whoever blocks me, I will kill them. Bai Pengju glared at Yu Chaolu and roared again and again. Losing a son, and already having white hair but losing his black-haired child, had already made him completely red-eyed. White Peak Master, there's no need for this. You don't only have one son. Besides, it was by Yifei and Murong Ling who took the initiative to be unfavorable towards Chu Zhetian, and he was only passively fighting back, so you can't blame him either. If you have to blame someone, just blame your son for being inferior to others. Yu Chaolu pouted and advised casually. But these words sounded in Bai Pengju's ears. They were more infuriating than they were helpful. All right, then I'll see if you can protect Chu Zhetian today. Bai Pengju's tone was stern. Then just try it. On my Zhuke Peak, if I let you kill my newly accepted disciple, I'll lose face. Yu Chaolu had her usual lazy expression on her beautiful face, as if she didn't care. However, when she started fighting, she was not at all careless. Ding, 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 boom, boom. In a flash, the two great mixed Yuan realm experts engaged in a fierce battle. This battle began to quickly escalate. Bai Pengju, who had lost his son, had already lost his rationality and fought without any reserve. He was completely fighting for his life. Both Chu Zhetian and Su Ruoyan saw their eyelids twitch. Boom. After another collision, Bai Pengju and Yu Chaolu flew back at the same time. Puff, puff. In the next second, the two great experts simultaneously spurted out a mouthful of blood. Clearly, they had both been injured. Yu Chaolu, do you have to protect Chu Zhetian? Bai Pengju spat out a mouthful of blood and asked through gritted teeth. As long as I'm here, you can't kill him. Yu Chaolu smiled and wiped a bit of blood from the corner of her mouth. All right, then today, we'll decide life or death. Chu Zhetian, I will kill him. Bai Pengju said in a ruthless voice. It was obviously a pose of not stopping until one of them died. And at this time, Chu Zhetian, looking at the blood at the corner of Yu Chaolu's mouth, felt a sharp pain in his heart. Her strength was at the same level as Bai Pengju, both at the mixed Yuan 6th level. If they truly fought, no one could be certain who would live. Or even, they could perish together. How could Chu Zhetian let Yu Chaolu really risk her life for him? His expression changed for a few moments, before he opened his mouth and spoke loudly. White Peak Master, 7 days from now, I am willing to have a return to the void battle with you. Do you dare to accept? Swish. As soon as these words came out, whether it was Bai Pengju or Yu Chaolu, including Su Ruoyan, their faces all changed. Chapter 27. Su Ruoyan, get out. The Battle of the Returning Void? Zhetian, don't be reckless. At these words, even Yu Chaolu, who usually seemed unfazed by everything, changed her expression. Abandoning her typically languid tone, she sharply rebuked Chu Zhetian. Su Ruoyan was also aghast. Chu Zhetian, are you really tired of living? This despicable man was supposed to be the offering for the Azure Dragon Peak's myriad transformation spirit gathering array. Why did he insist on courting death time and time again? Meanwhile, Bai Pengju's face twisted into a cruel, mocking smirk. Are you sure you want to engage in a battle of the returning void with me? Before Chu Zhetian could speak, Yu Chaolu interjected again. Zhetian, don't be rash. Do you know what the battle of the returning void entails? Master, I know what I'm doing. Chu Zhetian, however, nodded, his gaze firm, his tone steady. The next second, with a certain solemnity, he spoke with resounding clarity. I, Chu Zhetian, appeal to the heavens above and to the supreme void ancestor below, because I have sworn an irreconcilable hatred with Bai Pengju. This grudge must be settled. This is a personal matter. To avoid harming the interests of the sect, I am willing to engage in a battle of the returning void with him in 7 days. To resolve this feud, buzz. As these words were uttered, a wave of cosmic energy rippled. Chu Zhetian, radiating an aura of intensity, looked at Bai Pengju and said, Peak Master Bai, do you dare accept? Bai Pengju, watching him, let the smirk on his face widen. You insolent fool. I don't know where you get the courage to challenge me to the battle of the returning void. But since you seek death yourself, then I accept." The final two words landed, and the cosmic energy surged once more. It settled upon Chu Zhetian and Bai Pengju, signifying that the battle of the returning void had been acknowledged and permitted by the celestial rules, and that neither could renege. With matters now settled, Yu Chaolu gave Chu Zhetian a long, penetrating look and didn't say any more. Su Ruoyan shook her head, silently cursing, overestimating himself. The battle of the returning void was the most brutal form of duel within the Supreme Void Sect. It could be initiated when two people bore an unresolvable, mortal grudge, and they did not want to be punished by the sect for internal conflict. Once both parties agreed, a one-on-one deathmatch would be held within a set time frame. Outsiders, even the sect master, had no right to interfere. Otherwise, both individuals who initiated the battle of the returning void would be annihilated by the will of the heavens. In other words, Chu Zhetian's challenge to Bai Pengju to a battle of the returning void meant that in 7 days, he would have to face the White Tiger Peak master alone. No one else, not even his most protective second Grand Elder, was allowed to intervene. In the eyes of others, his actions were undoubtedly seeking death. Chu Zhetian, wash your neck and wait for death in 7 days. At that time, I will dismember you 1,000 times, to avenge Yifei and Linger. At this moment, Bai Pengju pointed at Chu Zhetian, his tone icy. Now that the battle of the returning void was set, there was no longer a need to fight Yu Chaolu. Someone, help Peak Master by return his son and beloved disciples' corpses to White Tiger Peak. Yu Chaolu called out. No need. Bai Pengju snorted coldly. He gathered the bodies of Bai Yifei and Murong Ling, placing them on the back of a spirit crane. After another venomous glance at Chu Zhetian, he rode off on the crane. Chu Zhetian watched him leave, the expression on his face neither pleased nor worried. He seemed to show no sign of anxiety or panic. He had managed to reach the innate realm within a single day. 7 days to face a primal chaos expert should be enough. Chu Zhetian, come here. I have something to say to you. Just then, a cold voice sounded. Su Ruoyan walked to his side, her expression complex. Yu Chaolu glanced at the two of them, then took Yeya's small hand and went into the house. Arriving at a corner of the courtyard. What is it? Speak. Chu Zhetian frowned, his tone carrying a hint of impatience. What kind of attitude is this towards me now? Just because you have a bastard daughter, you have become so impatient with me? Have you transferred all the love you had for me and our son to your daughter? After 5 years of marriage, are you so heartless? Su Ruoyan bit her lip, her tone seemingly laced with a trace of resentment and indignation. Why had this man suddenly changed so much? For 5 years, he had clearly loved her to the core. Now, just like that, he no longer loved her? How could he do this? What had stimulated this despicable man to cause such a change in his nature? Hearing these words, Chu Zhetian sneered, his tone harsh, heartless. Su Ruoyan, there are some things I don't want to expose. You'd better not bring shame upon yourself. Upon hearing this, Su Ruoyan's expression froze. Her eyes instinctively flickered with a hint of guilt. I don't know what you're talking about. We were married for years. Don't make a scene, all right? As long as you come back with me, I can overlook that you've been with another woman. I can even become your daughter's godmother, treat her as my own, and take good care of her in the future. After 5 years, Su Ruoyan, who had always been above Chu Zhetian, could now say such words, as if she had made a great concession. In this woman's heart, a living Chu Zhetian was still the most beneficial to her. Since she had come this far, she decided to try and see if she could trick this simp back. You want me to go back? Probably not because of any years of marriage, right? Let me think. Chu Zhetian's tone was mocking, and then, as if he had suddenly understood, oh, I see. The Myriad Transformation Spirit Gathering Array needs to be infused with my Myriad Transformation Source, right? And your cultivation realm is stuck at the peak of the postnatal realm, needing my assistance to cultivate? In an instant, Su Ruoyan's secret seemed to be exposed, and her incredibly beautiful face instantly flushed red. You what? Get out now. Otherwise, I won't mind killing another person today." With that, he turned directly and walked towards the house. He would never forget the venomous and disdainful face of the woman who had stabbed him in the back during his tribulation in his previous life. Nor would he forget the scene of them, father and daughter, trying to force him and Yueyue to death before. Whenever he thought of the past, when he was obedient and indulgent to this woman, he felt infinitely disgusted and worthless. The past him was a fool, one could say. But to go back to her now would be a true display of utter worthlessness. Su Ruoyan stood there, watching Chu Zhetian's resolute back, feeling a strange emptiness in her heart. It was as if something precious was about to be lost. But then, a strong look of resentment surfaced on her face. "Chu Zhetian, you are just a commoner. I didn't dislike your status and married you. Now, you dare to treat me like this. If it wasn't to help senior brother Bachin and my father get your myriad transformation spirit root, do you think I would endure the disgust in my heart and feign compliance with you? I'll just wait and see how you die after 7 days." Chapter 28, Drain Dry. When Chu Zhetian entered the house, he saw Yueyue checking on the conditions of Zhang Dalai and the other 3 in the guest room. Yueyue was also worried, extending her small hand, examining their breathing in a serious manner. This made Chu Zhetian laugh and cry, as if Zhang Dalai and the others were about to kick the bucket. "Master, don't worry. They've been poisoned by the seal of immortality powder. They will be fine after a few hours of sleep." Second senior brother was just knocked unconscious. Chu Zhetian, sensing Yueyue's worry, smiled and said, "Seal of immortality powder?" Yueyue's face flashed with surprise. She wasn't even sure what kind of poison her disciples had been poisoned with, but Chu Zhetian had spoken the name so precisely. And this kid wasn't affected by the poison? In an instant, she felt that Chu Zhetian was increasingly extraordinary. It seemed that the sect master and the second grand elder's high regard for Chu Zhetian definitely had hidden reasons, and was not simply due to personal feelings. However, with her character, she didn't ask many questions. At this moment, she suddenly groaned, a look of pain appearing on her beautiful face. A trace of blood also seeped from her mouth. Her fight with Bai Pengju had reached a life-or-death level, leaving her seriously injured. "Master!" Chu Zhetian's face tightened, and he quickly supported her. In an instant, he only felt a fragrant breeze rushing towards him, and a soft, delicate body leaned weakly against him. However, he did not dare to have any improper thoughts. He felt only gratitude, remorse, and worry. This new, beautiful master had acted to protect him several times, and was injured in the process. This kindness was as heavy as Mount Tai. For the rest of his life, he would definitely not fail her, and would protect her at all costs. Grandmaster, how are you?" Beside them, Yueyue also called out worriedly. Seeing the blood at Yueyue's mouth, the little one was clearly frightened. Tears came, and her voice became choked with sobs. "Good girl, Grandmaster is fine." Yueyue patted her little head and comforted her. Then, seemingly feeling that she was leaning on Chu Zhetian for support, she quickly moved away from him and tried to stand straight. Her beautiful eyes flashed with something different. "Yueyue, you play by yourself first. Daddy will help your Grandmaster rest." Chu Zhetian didn't think too much about it, and after explaining to his daughter, helped Yueyue into the inner bedroom. "I'm fine. Just take a healing elixir, and I can adjust my breathing. You go out and play with the child." After entering, Yueyue waved her hand, pretending to be lazy. But her voice had a hint of weakness. "Master, let me check your injuries." At this moment, Chu Zhetian's heart moved, and he said respectfully and sincerely. He had previously been able to use his spiritual power to assist Su Ruoyan in cultivation, and at the same time, had a certain healing effect. Because she wanted to claim him, Su Ruoyan even forbade him from telling others about it, thus becoming her exclusive tool. Now, with the myriad transformation spirit root upgraded to the ultimate version of the Devourer Saint body, His spiritual power could also fuse with all things, and should still not conflict with the spiritual power of others. The effects of assisting in cultivation and treating injuries should also still be there. Before Yu Chaolu could say anything, Chu Zhetian's hand touched Yu Chaolu's back, pressing on the Pohu acupoints on both sides. Pure spiritual power flowed into Yu Chaolu's body along the acupoints. The next second, Yu Chaolu only felt a stream of clear water spreading through her meridians, making her incredibly comfortable. She even unconsciously let out a soft moan that made one think too much. She immediately realized that it was inappropriate and quickly clenched her teeth and closed her mouth. Damn it! How could she make such a shameful sound? If Zhetian misunderstood and thought she was seducing him, she was his master. Meanwhile, Chu Zhetian was also a bit distracted by Yu Chaolu's moan. Even though Yu Chaolu was his master now, she was still a beautiful woman of incomparable beauty. For powerful female cultivators, being 60-something years old meant nothing, but rather gave her a maturity that young girls lacked. Chu Zhetian was also a man full of vitality. How could he remain unaffected? But then, he looked at his nose and suppressed the evil thoughts in his heart. No matter how beautiful his master was, she should not be desecrated. She cared so much for him. How could he be rebellious and have any improper thoughts towards his master? In an instant, both of them suppressed the trace of something different in their hearts. Next, Yu Chaolu only felt more and more comfortable. The spiritual power that Chu Zhetian poured into her body felt like nourishing and comforting the injured organs with each pass. That feeling of comfort from within her body made her want to groan again and again. She had to clench her teeth to endure it. The injuries caused by the fight with Bai Pengju were recovering at an astonishing speed. Master, how are you feeling? Is it better? Chu Zhetian asked with concern. Yu Chaolu wanted to answer, but as soon as she opened her mouth, she made a sound that incited crime again. Chu Zhetian was sweating and simply didn't ask. Within the time it takes to burn an incense stick, Yu Chaolu's injuries had completely healed. But at this moment, her heart moved, and she only felt something within her body, as if under the effect of Chu Zhetian's spiritual power, it had loosened a bit. Therefore, she did not get up and move away, but instead began to actively absorb Chu Zhetian's spiritual power. Feeling that suction, Chu Zhetian also quickly cooperated, pouring more and more of his spiritual power into her body. Poof! Moments later, Yu Chaolu only felt that a light sound had appeared within her body. A small bottleneck shattered instantly. The aura on her body surged a few points. From the 6th level of the primal chaos realm, she broke through to the 7th level. At this moment, Yu Chaolu felt that the spiritual power that Chu Zhetian poured into her body had come to a sudden stop. She looked back and saw the bitter smile on his face. Master, I'm sorry. My spiritual power is gone. Chu Zhetian said apologetically. He knew that Yu Chaolu was relying on his spiritual power to cultivate this situation. He had experienced countless times with Su Ruoyan before. But Yu Chaolu was a primal chaos expert. The degree of her spiritual power was far superior to his. So, even if Chu Zhetian's spiritual power was pure and condensed, it had been easily absorbed by her in that moment. Ah, I drained you dry? Yu Chaolu's face was astonished, and she exclaimed subconsciously. Then, she realized the ambiguity in her words. Pooey, pooey. Those who don't know would think. Chu Zhetian's face also turned red, and he nodded sheepishly. For a moment, the atmosphere between them became extremely strange. In the end, Yu Chaolu cleared her throat lightly, smiled and said, What I mean is, I drained your spiritual power. You little rascal, don't think too much. Chu Zhetian smiled awkwardly. I don't dare, disciple wouldn't. This said, it sounded like the opposite was true. Even if he hadn't thought too much, now that you reminded him, not to think too much was impossible. I never thought that your spiritual power could not only heal people, but could also assist others in cultivation. At this time, Yu Chaolu lifted one corner of her mouth, examining Chu Zhetian with interest and teased. It seems that I found a treasure? She was naturally a bit unrestrained and wild. not constrained by worldly etiquette. After a brief moment of awkwardness, she was now relaxed, and reached out a jade-like finger, lifted Chu Zhetian's chin, as if examining a treasure. Chapter 29. Does she want her to go tonight? What's the plan? Feeling the warm touch of the jade finger against his skin, Chu Zhetian's face flushed crimson. Logically, having lived 2 lives, he shouldn't react like this. In his previous life, he had faced all sorts of temptations, all kinds of women, and remained completely unfazed, even ruthlessly discarding affections. But with Yu Chaolu, it was different. Deep down, Chu Zhetian's feelings for her were incredibly complex. Gratitude, indebtedness, guilt, admiration, respect, affection. It was like a teenager facing a beautiful teacher. So, even if Chu Zhetian was indifferent to other women, he became like a young boy around Yu Chaolu. Hee. Why are you blushing? Did master tease you, and you got shy? Yu Chaolu, seeing Chu Zhetian's blushing face, chuckled, finding him quite amusing. Chu Zhetian didn't know how to respond for a moment. This beautiful master of his could be unrestrained, but as her disciple, he wouldn't dare to joke around casually. If master has need, once this disciple has recovered his spiritual power, I will assist you with your cultivation. Chu Zhetian changed the subject. Hearing this, Yu Chaolu waved her hand. No need. Wouldn't that delay your cultivation? Don't forget, you have a battle of the returning void in 7 days. If you are still alive after 7 days, perhaps I will use you. Speaking of this, she put away her smile and, for once, asked seriously, Do you have confidence in the battle of the returning void? Master, please rest assured, I have 9/10 confidence. Chu Zhetian said confidently. Oh. Yu Chaolu, hearing this, looked at him thoughtfully. She felt that this boy had many more secrets than met the eye. However, in the end, she didn't ask too many questions. Everyone, to a certain extent, had their own secrets. Especially for cultivators, these secrets were often related to their life and death. She had just accepted Chu Zhetian as her disciple, so naturally, she couldn't pry too much. Finally, she took something out of her spatial artifact. This item looked like a little person carved from spiritual jade, radiating a strange aura. This is a scapegoat jade child. Break it at a critical moment, and it can block one attack for you. Use it well, and it might save your life, allowing you to turn the tables. Take it. Chu Zhetian took it, feeling truly grateful. Thank you, master. Yu Chaolu nodded faintly, and then didn't stay any longer. After instructing the other disciples to come over and carry Zhang Dalai and the other 3 away, this beautiful peak master also left. Even though she appeared uninhibited, after the strange sensation earlier, she felt a little awkward being with Chu Zhetian. And after leaving this Qingyuan mansion, Yu Chaolu looked towards the direction of Azure Dragon Peak, and a sneer appeared on her lips. Su Ruoyan, such a man, and you didn't know how to cherish him? I wonder if you regret it now? With her insightful and intelligent mind, how could she not guess that Chu Zhetian used to often expend his spiritual power to assist Su Ruoyan in her cultivation? In Yu Chaolu's impression, the eldest daughter of this Azure Dragon Peak Masters, her cultivation talent was not very good. From the time she began cultivating as a child, until before her marriage to Chu Zhetian, she seemed to only be at the 6th level of the Zhou realm. But in the 5 years of her marriage to Chu Zhetian, she advanced from the 6th level of Zhou to the peak of the 9th level of the postnatal realm, only 1 step away from the innate realm. Now, it seemed that it was not Su Ruoyan who suddenly had an epiphany, but Chu Zhetian's doing. Such a treasure-like man, and Su Ruoyan had lost him. Truly, it was a pleasure to watch. Over here, Su Ruoyan had just returned to Azure Dragon Peak. In the Peak Master's manner. Father, Chu Zhetian refuses to come back, Su Ruoyan said with a cold face. Next, she told Su Hongtu everything that had happened earlier. After listening, Su Hongtu's expression was uncertain. What did you say? In just 1 day, that wretched beast's strength has recovered to the postnatal realm, and he killed Bai Yifei? And he proposed a battle of the returning void to Bai Pengju? This beast, It seems he's really gone mad. Speaking, his tone was gloomy. It seems we can only wait until after 7 days and seize that beast's corpse. Now, I am afraid that Bai Pengju will also covet this myriad transformation spirit root. Su Ruoyan, hearing this, also frowned slightly. And just as she was about to say something, a clear and melodious voice suddenly rang out. Father, what are you talking about? Looking in the direction of the voice, a young woman walked in. The woman had a delicate and beautiful face, and her features were 7 parts similar to Su Ruoyan. But her temperament was completely different. It revealed a charming and playful taste. It was Su Hongtu's younger daughter, Su Ruoyan's younger sister. Su Ruoyan. It's Ruoyan? You've come out of seclusion? How is it? Have you succeeded in your breakthrough? Su Hongtu smiled, his gaze carrying a hint of anticipation, looking at his younger daughter. Su Ruoyan's expression was a little strange. The relationship between the two sisters was not very good. Previously, Su Ruoyan had been in seclusion to break through the innate realm. Su Ruoyan did not want this little hussy to succeed in breaking through and surpass her. The next second, Su Ruoyan's face fell, and she shrugged, no. Hearing this, Su Hongtu nodded with a blank expression and comforted her. It's okay. The innate realm is naturally one of the hardest bottlenecks to break through. At your age, don't rush. And deep in Su Ruoyan's eyes, a trace of gloating flashed. At this time, Su Ruoyan adjusted her emotions and then asked again, Father, what were you discussing just now? By the way, where is my brother-in-law? Hasn't he returned yet from his military campaign against 10,000 Demon Mountain Villa? Hearing that this little girl, as soon as she came out of seclusion, asked about Chu Zhetian's whereabouts, Su Ruoyan's face immediately turned cold. Was this little hussy so obsessed with Chu Zhetian? To say who in their family had the best attitude towards Chu Zhetian since their marriage, it wasn't her, the proper wife, nor Su Hongtu, the father-in-law, but her sister, Su Ruoyan. It was not because since childhood, she liked to compete with her sister for everything, or that Su Ruoyan really had feelings for Chu Zhetian. For 5 years, in front of this brother-in-law, Su Ruoyan had always behaved with utmost closeness, one could even say, actively. Thinking about this, Su Ruoyan felt a prick of irritation in her heart. And at this moment, Su Hongtu looked at his younger daughter, and his heart moved. In his mind, he recalled a sentence that his great-grandfather had said, Your eldest daughter was divorced, but you still have your second daughter, don't you? Although Chu Zhetian is dead, I can also seize his spirit root. However, refining a spirit root has a certain chance of failure, or reducing the quality of the spirit root. It's best to deceive that wretched beast back. Whether to use him or to kill him and seize the spirit root is more convenient than this right now. Don't let it fall into the hands of others. Let the cooked duck fly away. Even if he is butchered by Bai Pengju after 7 days, before that, I must have him infuse the myriad transformation spirit source into the myriad transformation spirit gathering array once more. Thinking this, Su Hongtu cleared his throat. Ahem. Ruoyan, your brother-in-law had a bit of a conflict with your sister and is currently staying on Vermilion Bird Peak. How about you go and call him back tonight? Hearing this, Su Ruoyan was stunned, and then her beautiful eyes darted around. In them, there was even a hint of excitement. And beside her, Su Ruoyan's face turned black. Was father letting her sister try to win back Chu Zhetian? And to go tonight? What was he trying to do? Chapter 30. The Whereabouts of Yeya's Mother. Qingyuan Mansion. After sending Yu Chaolu away, Chu Zhetian turned around and picked up his daughter. Since his rebirth, he had first entered the Blood Prison Demon Cave, and then been called by the sect master and several grand elders for questioning. Until now, he still hadn't been able to properly dote on his daughter. He had countless things he wanted to tell Yeya. He wished he could spend all 12 hours of the day holding his precious daughter. Daddy. After being picked up by Chu Zhetian, Yeya looked at her daddy and called out softly and sweetly. With 2 small dimples at the corners of her mouth and big eyes full of affection and dependence, Chu Zhetian felt his heart melting. At that moment, father and daughter looked at each other. A sense of closeness, The connection of blood surged between them. "Baby, let daddy have a good look at you." Chu Zhetian kissed his daughter, and then sat down with the little one in his arms. He looked at this little face. Thinking of the mud on it when they first met, his heart ached. She, a child, had experienced what kind of hardship to find the Supreme Void Sect? It was a pity that in his previous life, after she came to him, he had abandoned her and let the servants arrange things at their whim. When Yueyue was taken away by the servants, her eyes looking at him were filled with how much longing, disappointment, and helplessness. Thinking of that scene, the current Chu Zhetian couldn't help but want to take his heart out and deeply make it up to his daughter. "Daddy, why are you looking at Yueyue like this? Is Yueyue ugly?" Feeling her daddy's complex gaze, Yueyue shrank her head slightly and asked a little fearfully, "How could that be? My Yueyue is the most beautiful. Daddy can't look at you enough no matter how he looks." Chu Zhetian said with the gentlest tone he could muster. He, really? Does Daddy like Yueyue?" Yueyue laughed, and her big eyes became two crescents. The two small dimples, though without any wine, made Chu Zhetian drunk beyond measure. Daddy loves Yueyue the most. Baby, tell Daddy, how have you been all these years? Where is your mother?" Mentioning this, a wicked and beautiful face appeared in Chu Zhetian's mind. The scene of being poisoned and imprisoned and tortured by the other party for 3 days and 3 nights also flashed before his eyes like a slideshow. The Dark Night Palace demon, Illegitimate. This woman who gave Chu Zhetian both hatred and complex emotions. How have you treated my daughter all these years? Thinking of Yueyue, at 6 years old, being shorter by half a head than Chu Kongqing at 4, Chu Zhetian's heart ached terribly. He could guess that his daughter should have been treated harshly since childhood. In his previous life, the little one found her daddy, but the situation didn't improve at all. It was even adding insult to injury. In the end, she died in front of him to help him withstand the heavenly tribulation. Her previous life had been so very bitter. Mommy. When Yueyue mentioned her mommy, she shrank her head, and a trace of longing and fear arose in her big eyes. It could be seen that even though the other party had been harsh to her, Yueyue still had an inseparable affection for her mommy. Next, Yueyue told Chu Zhetian about her experiences from childhood. A child's expressive abilities were not too strong, and her memory was also quite scattered, saying one thing and then another. But Chu Zhetian still understood the general picture. From the time Yueyue could remember things, she was arranged by Illegitimate to live in a small town, and raised by an old woman called Grey Granny. Illegitimate would occasionally come to see her daughter, but was incredibly cold to Yueyue. Even the coldness on her, and the look in her eyes that showed no emotion, made the little one feel afraid of her. And just half a month ago, Illegitimate suddenly came, and informed Grey Granny to take Yueyue to the Supreme Void Sect to find Chu Zhetian. On the road, the old woman and the little one were chased by people from the Dark Night Palace. Grey Granny stopped them and let Yueyue run away. Fortunately, they weren't far from the Supreme Void Sect, and because the little one was clever enough, it took many hardships to find her way here. Granny. Woo-woo. Granny. At this time, Yueyue was crying her heart out when she spoke of how Grey Granny had been harmed. Actually, the old woman was not usually nice to Yueyue, and even beat and scolded her. But after all, she was the person who had been with her since childhood, and the feelings were naturally extraordinary. And in the end, she also tried her best to protect Yueyue, regardless of whether it was due to a change of conscience or because of Illegimate's orders. Chu Zhetian quickly comforted his daughter and also quietly wondered, "Illegitimate, why did you keep my daughter away from me since childhood and let her live with Grey Granny? And why are you so cold to the child? Is there some hardship or another reason?" In his previous life, he was indifferent to all this. All he could think about was how to please Ruoyan. Even to avoid suspicion, he did his utmost to distance himself from Yueyue. Naturally, he also hadn't inquired about Illegimate's situation. In his memory, he never saw this woman again. And in the battle where the Dark Night Palace launched a large-scale attack on the Supreme Void Sect in his previous life, she also did not appear. Perhaps it was because he was indifferent, Perhaps she was already gone? This time, suddenly asking Yueyue to come to the Supreme Void Sect to find him. Did that woman have some kind of crisis? Yiling Mei, in this life, I must find you and get to the bottom of things. See the person alive and the corpse when they're dead. No matter what, you are the child's birth mother. I was devoted to Su Ruoyan and her son, and there is no reason for me to disregard my daughter's birth mother. Chu Zhetian thought to himself. Of course, all of this was based on having strength. Reborn, his starting point, was the level of hell difficulty. The near future was the battle of the returning void in 7 days. A little further ahead was his promise to destroy the Dark Knight Palace within 3 months. And even further away was the great disaster that the Supreme Void Sect would soon face. This life, he would definitely not allow the sect master and the second Grand Elder to die. Besides that, what made Chu Zhetian most worried was the demon seed within his daughter's body. With Chu Zhetian's knowledge from his previous life, he knew a thing or two about this demon seed. A demon seed was an evil seed planted into a new life by some evil cultivators in order to continue to exist when their lifespan was coming to an end. Its essence was a strand of soul power. It would gradually devour the host's own soul. After the host's soul was devoured and weakened to a certain extent, and lost its resistance to external souls, the evil cultivator would then take over the host, thus allowing themselves to obtain rebirth. If the matter of the demon seed was not resolved in time, not to mention whether the Supreme Void Sect would allow Yueyue to continue to live, the damage that the demon seed itself would cause to Yueyue's soul was something Chu Zhetian could not accept. In the previous life, he didn't know how Yueyue had later escaped the fate of being taken over. But this life, he would eliminate all potential factors that could threaten his daughter. And the evil cultivator who could plant a demon seed had to be at least at the Yuan Ing level or above. In other words, Chu Zhetian, if he wanted to resolve the demon seed on his daughter's body as soon as possible, might have to face a Yuan Ing great expert within a short time. Chapter 31. The Consequences of Enraging a Good Man. Supreme Void Sect. The sect's back mountain. A secluded and spiritually rich courtyard. Evergreen courtyard. The reception room. 2 figures, seated opposite each other. They were the Great Grand Elder, by Chang'e, and the 4th Grand Elder, Jianlian. At this moment, the atmosphere between the two was somewhat heavy. After Chu Zhetian exposed their affair yesterday, Jianlian didn't know how to face Bai Chang'e, and Bai Chang'e also didn't want to see her for a while. If Chu Zhetian hadn't created another disturbance, the two wouldn't have met alone in the short term. In fact, Bai Chang'e had long known about Jianlian's infidelity. This was also the reason why, in his previous life, after he colluded with the Dark Knight Palace to subvert the sect, he temporarily supported Su Hongtu to take the sect master's position instead of supporting his own by family's offspring. But to be exposed so brutally by Chu Zhetian was something he could not accept. Deep down, a hint of hatred surged towards this suspected emperor star of the sect. Chu Zhetian actually killed Bai Yifei? If I remember correctly, Bai Yifei's strength had already broken through to the innate realm, right? How did this Chu Zhetian do it? The 4th Grand Elder Jianlian's voice sounded. Her voice was filled with shock. Following this, Bai Chang'e said coldly, "This matter is absolutely true. This Chu Zhetian had just lost his cultivation. After coming out of the blood prison demon cave and just training for 1 day, he could kill an innate realm expert. It seems that the opportunity he received was simply heaven-defying. If we allow him to grow up, our plan may be difficult to achieve." Although the two now harbored deep resentment towards each other, the matter concerned their grand plan, so they still sat down together to discuss it. Jianlian lowered her voice and asked, "Then what to do?" "Perhaps." Speaking of this, she put her fingers together, shaped like a knife, and made a gesture of slitting a throat. Under the candlelight, the shadow cast on the wall made the scene look sinister and terrifying. Not urgent. The battle of the returning void in 7 days. If he can die in the hands of my useless grandson, that would be the best. If he cannot, we'll make further plans. But in any case, we should be prepared for both scenarios. The plan, perhaps it should be brought forward. I have been divining these past few days, and I always have a feeling that things are not right. Bai Changqing added with a hint of coldness in his tone. Good. Then I will contact the Dark Knight Palace and have them send someone over to discuss it as soon as possible. Moments later, a spirit pigeon flew out from the evergreen courtyard. That night, Yueyue had already been coaxed to sleep by Chu Zhetian. In the evening, Zhang Dalai and the other three had come over again. The meal in the morning was poisoned by Morong Ling, so they were knocked out early on and couldn't truly enjoy themselves. So in the evening, they had another good time drinking. During the dinner, they talked about Morong Ling poisoning them and taking the opportunity to kill Chu Zhetian, which made all four extremely angry, especially Zhang Wenxuan, who felt that it was because of his own fondness for women that Morong Ling was able to take advantage of the situation and almost harmed junior brother Chu. He didn't feel any sorrow or regret for her death, much less blame Chu Zhetian. With the words, fleeting romance, the matter was over. Instead, he pulled out a large amount of silver notes and spirit stones to make up for his mistake. This made Chu Zhetian suspect that this second senior brother might like this feeling of throwing money at people. And compared to the deaths of Morong Ling and Bai Yifei, these several senior and junior brothers and sisters were obviously more worried about the Battle of the Returning Void in 7 days. They were worried that their Chu junior brother wouldn't be able to defeat Bai Pengju. And there were naturally more people who were worried than just them. The second Grand Elder, Su Beiwang, also came over in the evening. He gave Chu Zhetian all kinds of cultivation resources, as well as a heaven-grade upper-rank soft armor, dragon vein golden silk cloak. With his temper and protectiveness, if Chu Zhetian hadn't repeatedly assured him that he had the confidence to kill Bai Pengju in 7 days, the second Grand Elder would have wanted to cripple the other party in advance. As can be seen at this moment, Chu Zhetian was sitting cross-legged in the courtyard and began to cultivate the supreme Tao scripture. With the operation of the cultivation method, the surrounding heaven and earth spirit energy, including yin energy, the 5 elements energy, and even the residual death energy and resentment energy, after Morong Ling and Bai Yifei had died here, all were refined and absorbed by Chu Zhetian like a giant, gluttonous beast. The Devourer's saint body was like a gluttonous beast, devouring all the energy it could consume. Boom! After half an hour, Chu Zhetian's chi condensation realm broke through again. From the innate realm, and advanced to the 4th level of the innate realm. And at this very moment, a vacuum appeared near the Qingyuan mansion. Heaven and earth spirit energy and other kinds of energy were almost absorbed by Chu Zhetian, causing the heaven and earth spirit energy in other areas to gather in this direction. Just at this moment, Chu Zhetian made a sound, and suddenly opened his eyes. Someone else is here? He looked in a certain direction, and after a few breaths, he saw a figure flip over the wall and enter. Seeing this person, Chu Zhetian was stunned. Then, his expression became strange. What are you doing here? He frowned and asked, Brother-in-law, I miss you, and came to see you. What kind of attitude is this? The newcomer was a young woman who looked to be around 20 years old. It was Su Ruoyan's younger sister, Su Ruoyan. She walked towards Chu Zhetian, her body graceful, her waist swaying. A white gauze skirt, under the moonlight, made her look like an elf. As she spoke, that exquisite and beautiful face of hers still carried a touch of grievance and resentment, which made people feel pity. The eyes looking at Chu Zhetian were even watery, as if filled with love. Cough, cough. I'm not your brother-in-law anymore. Seeing this sister-in-law, Chu Zhetian coughed a few times, feeling a bit of a headache. Her initiative had always been hard for him to deal with. Hearing this, Su Ruoyan still walked over on her own. She sat down on the ground in front of Chu Zhetian, embracing her knees. Then, I won't call you brother-in-law. What do I call you? Brother Chu? She asked with a sweet smile. You can call me Brother Chu. Say, what are you here for? If you also want to persuade me to return to Azure Dragon Peak, I suggest you save your breath. Chu Zhetian said lightly. Su Ruoyan immediately made a tisk sound, pouted, and said, I didn't come to persuade you. Why would I persuade you to go back and reunite with Su Ruoyan, that bitch. You've divorced her, and I couldn't be happier. Saying this, she just lay down and rested her head on Chu Zhetian's lap. Her beautiful eyes stared at Chu Zhetian. Chu Zhetian's body immediately stiffened. He felt this action was a bit too intimate. Chu Zhetian, you heartless, stinky man. Don't move. If you dare to move my head away, I'll bite you to death. Possibly aware of Chu Zhetian's discomfort, Su Ruoyan threatened, scolding him. Saying this, she also showed her teeth in a display of defiance. Do you know that you are playing with fire? Chu Zhetian lowered his head and looked at the exquisite and beautiful face, skin that seemed to be able to break at a touch, and tempting red lips. His heart couldn't help but beat a few times faster. Once upon a time, he, like a loyal dog, had only Su Ruoyan in his heart. In the face of Su Ruoyan's initiative and teasing, he only felt awkward and guilty. But now, his mindset had changed. Suddenly, he found that the girl in front of him was also exquisitely beautiful. She was like a little demon that would take a life. Yes, I am playing with fire. Anyway, you are just a coward and wouldn't dare to do anything to me. It was before, and it is now. You have already broken off relations with Su Ruoyan, yet you are still so cowardly. If you have the guts, eat me up. Goody two shoes. Su Ruoyan raised her chin, her tone as if filled with disdain and provocation. And with the action of her lifting her chin, that touch of red lip looked even more alluring. Chu Zhetian snorted coldly, and thinking of all his previous failures in front of Su Ruoyan, his heart immediately burned with anger. Goody two shoes? Today, I will let you know the consequences of angering a goody two shoes. Chapter 32. The sister is not doing well. Here, Chu Zhetian and Su Ruoyan were about to determine who was superior. And on the other side, Azure Dragon Peak, Peak Master's Manor. Father, did you really ask Ruoyan to go find Chu Zhetian? Su Ruoyan asked, looking at her father, her beautiful brows furrowed. Otherwise, do whatever it takes to get Chu Zhetian to infuse the Myriad Transformation Spirit Source into the Myriad Transformation Spirit Gathering Array again within 7 days. You couldn't get him back, and I naturally had to let your sister try. Su Hongtu said, as a matter of course. He was extremely utilitarian, and as long as he could achieve his goals, he wouldn't care about the means and methods used. Hearing this, Su Ruoyan gritted her teeth and asked, if Ruoyan also fails, are you going to have my other little concubines go? Su Hongtu's tone immediately paused, and he snorted coldly, nonsense. Then, he changed his tone. It was your sister who was willing to go. Father didn't force her. Su Ruoyan ground her teeth and said in hatred, of course, I know you didn't force her. Saying this, she secretly cursed, little hussy, in her heart. In her mind, she couldn't help but recall the scene of her sister flaunting and actively provoking Chu Zhetian in the past. In the past, Su Ruoyan hadn't felt this strongly. But now thinking about it, it really made her angry, especially thinking that the man, who used to be so devoted to her, and was now tonight possibly ingratiating himself with her sister, made Su Ruoyan angry to the point of gnashing her teeth. That licking dog should have belonged to her. She would rather that the other party die, and wouldn't want to see the other party betraying her. Junior sister, Ruoyan is also making a sacrifice for the entire Azure Dragon Peak. Don't think too much about it. Moreover, you also have me. Zhang Beichen was also present, and at this moment reached out to pull Su Ruoyan and comforted her. However, Su Ruoyan shook off the other party's hand unhappily and said coldly, what sacrifice? She wants to sacrifice herself, but she has to be able to sacrifice herself. Chu Zhetian, that wretched man, only has me in his heart. Even if Su Ruoyan, that little hussy, was stripped naked, Chu Zhetian probably wouldn't be interested. Sending her to win back Chu Zhetian was just to bring humiliation upon herself. Hearing her words, Su Hongtu's face immediately turned cold, and he snorted coldly without speaking. And Zhang Beichen frowned secretly and only felt extremely unhappy in his heart. Originally, he thought that after Chu Zhetian broke off relations with Su Ruoyan, he could spend his days with her openly and spend all day in sweet nothings with each other, and even, in revenge, be together intimately and make up for all the regrets of their previous secret encounters. However, the reality was that it was exactly the opposite. These few days, Su Ruoyan's time with him was actually less than before. When they were together, she was also absent-minded and didn't feel like doing anything more. What was wrong with senior sister Ruoyan? Chu Zhetian had divorced you. Why do you still think that the other party only has you in his heart? You used to disdain Chu Zhetian, but now you can't let go of him? Thinking about this, Zhang Beichen felt a hint of urgency in his heart. 7 days. After 7 days, Chu Zhetian is going to die. At that time, senior sister Ruoyan will only have me in her heart. And just as Zhang Beichen was lost in thought, Su Ruoyan also suddenly thought of something. Right. Now that Chu Zhetian has broken off relations with me, will he also assist that little hussy, Su Ruoyan, with her cultivation? And even help her break through? Thinking of this, Su Ruoyan's heart surged with a sense of crisis. If that little hussy was stronger than her, wouldn't her tail have to be raised even higher? I actually broke through? Su Ruoyan's voice changed in tone. Boom. At the same time, a light sound came from within her body. The barrier from the postnatal realm to the innate realm was also broken. That exquisite and beautiful face was flushed with radiance. Her beautiful eyes looked at Chu Zhetian with watery eyes, satisfied with joy and gratitude. And at this moment, Chu Zhetian's eyes also flashed with surprise. Boom. Within his body, it was as if there was thunder. The barrier from the innate realm to the primal chaos realm was also completely gone. That's right. Not only had Su Ruoyan broken through the bottleneck, but he himself had also benefited the most. During this process, Chu Zhetian's realm also advanced all the way. From the 4th level of the innate realm, he rapidly advanced to the peak of the 9th level of the innate realm. Finally, when the two reached the pinnacle, they broke through together. Su Ruoyan entered the innate realm, and Chu Zhetian advanced to the primal chaos realm in one fell swoop. This Devourer Saint body is simply amazingly useful. It can even devour the yin energy within the other party's body and merge it with the yang energy within my body, becoming the purest life origin to feed back to both sides. This effect wasn't there when Su Ruoyan did something perfunctory with me before. In other words, the Devourer Saint body also comes with the ability to replenish yang by absorbing yin. Having this effect, Chu Zhetian suspected it was also related to Su Ruoyan being a virgin. Her body's yin energy had never been depleted, coupled with her years of cultivation, was naturally extremely abundant. Thinking about it, it was actually quite ironic. Su Ruoyan, who looked seductive and uninhibited during the day, was actually chaste. And Su Ruoyan, who seemed to be above all else, like a proud immortal, but had an affair with Zhang Beichen behind his back. The affairs of this world truly cannot be judged by appearances. At this moment, Chu Zhetian had a clear train of thought, thinking of his previous actions like a licking dog, of being devoted to Su Ruoyan. He wanted to slap himself twice. In his previous life, he was clearly invincible in the world and became the Zhetian war sovereign, who dominated the world. Yet he had still been devoted to Su Ruoyan and didn't know how many beautiful women he had refused. Of course, if Su Ruoyan also cherished him in the same way, it would have been worth it. But the devotion was repaid with betrayal and resentment. Thinking about it, it was simply laughable and pitiful. This life, he wouldn't be so foolish. A great man born between heaven and earth should be full of heroic spirit and be open-minded and unrestrained. Why be controlled and manipulated by a certain woman? At this moment, Su Ruoyan was lying on Chu Zhetian and used her fingers to draw circles on his chest. Brother-in-law, how did you do it? I don't know if I've suffered a loss or benefited. Before this, Su Ruoyan couldn't have imagined that the bottleneck that had been holding her back for 2 years would break through with a single deep exchange with Chu Zhetian. That feeling was too wonderful. Chu Zhetian smiled and stroked Su Ruoyan's hair jokingly. Aren't we helping each other? Saying that, he said jokingly, Little demon, ever since I married you, sister, you have been constantly flirting with me and today you have finally gotten your wish?" Hearing this, Su Ruoyan rolled her eyes, and her face still flushed. "Stinky man, don't act like you have the upper hand and try to sell yourself, and don't think that I really like you that much. I'm just trying to get back at my sister. From childhood to adulthood, anything that she had, I wanted to take." Chu Zhetian, hearing this, shrugged indifferently. "Then shouldn't you go and take Zhang Beichen? Why are you always flirting with me?" Su Ruoyan pinched Chu Zhetian and snorted softly. "Didn't I say, anything that I see, I want to take? But Zhang Beichen? This young lady doesn't look down on him." Chu Zhetian said, "Oh," and followed by rolling over and once again pinning Su Ruoyan down. "Little demon, then shall we take revenge on your sister again? What do you think?" Chapter 33. Is it Chu Zhetian who helped you break through? The lower half of the night. Su Ruoyan, who was cultivating in her own cave, opened her eyes in a somewhat annoyed manner. "I can't break through. I really can't break through. When can I reach the innate realm?" She looked frustrated and defeated. Without Chu Zhetian's assistance, coupled with the failure of the myriad transformation spirit gathering array, Su Ruoyan felt as if her cultivation was completely ineffective. Forget it. Didn't Su Ruoyan get stuck for 2 years? Just take it slow. Su Ruoyan comforted herself. In fact, she knew that her sister's cultivation talent was far superior to hers. In the past, Su Ruoyan's realm had pulled her far behind. 5 years ago, the other party had already reached the 3rd level of the postnatal realm, while she was only at the 6th level of the Zhoutian realm. Over these 5 years, with Chu Zhetian's selfless help, she had caught up with Su Ruoyan and had reached the same level. Now, having lost Chu Zhetian's assistance, her sister also couldn't break through the innate realm. Her being stuck was also natural. Thinking this way, Su Ruoyan felt much better in her heart. Right, has that little hussy come back? Thinking this, Su Ruoyan left her cave and went towards her sister's residence. A moment later, Su Ruoyan was standing at the door of Ruoyan Pavilion, and after waiting for about the time it takes to burn an incense stick, she finally saw a figure walking over. The other party's legs were slightly apart while walking, which looked a little strange. So much so that Su Ruoyan didn't recognize her at first glance. After all, Su Ruoyan normally walked with a graceful sway. After getting closer, Su Ruoyan could see clearly that the other party was indeed her own sister. "Ruoyan, why are you only coming back now?" Su Ruoyan sized up the other party a few times and asked with a frown, "You think that it's easy to convince Chu Zhetian? I almost couldn't come back tonight." Su Ruoyan pouted and said unhappily, "Then did you convince him? What's wrong with your legs?" Su Ruoyan asked, looking at the other party with a full of confusion and with a sharp gaze. Being a woman herself, a bad guess welled up in her heart. Could it be? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Chu Zhetian, that wretched man, only had her in his heart. What do you care? Get out of the way. I'm going back to sleep. I'm exhausted, Su Ruoyan said, and pushed Su Ruoyan to the side. Su Ruoyan resisted instinctively, but felt that her sister's strength was completely suppressing her. You broke through? She widened her eyes and asked in disbelief. Yes. And it was brother-in-law who helped me break through. Oh, sister, I really have to thank you. If it weren't for you forcing brother-in-law and breaking off with you, how could I have this opportunity? Gegajij. Su Ruoyan turned her face and said with a beaming smile. Looking at it from Su Ruoyan's perspective, it was simply infuriating. Su Ruoyan, hearing this, was trembling with anger. There was only one sentence in her mind. Chu Zhetian helped her sister break through to the innate realm? That wretched man helped another woman break through? How could he do this? How dare he betray her? If he were still hers, then this innate expert would have been Su Ruoyan. Chu Zhetian, you unfaithful man. You must give me an explanation. At this moment, Su Ruoyan had been consumed by anger and jealousy. The next second, she left Azure Dragon Peak directly and headed towards Vermilion Bird Peak. She had to ask Chu Zhetian in person and get a clear answer. Here. After Su Ruoyan left, Chu Zhetian cleaned himself up and got out of bed. After a high-intensity bout of lovemaking, he was still full of energy. Even after another bout of yin and yang replenishment, his strength improved further. He had actually improved another small realm and reached the second level of the primal chaos realm. Cultivators, after reaching the innate realm, could refine and mobilize the innate primordial qi and bring into play the human body's innate potential. And after reaching the primal chaos realm, the spiritual power in the body could enter the abdomen's umbilical cord and merge with the innate primordial qi, allowing cultivators' strength to greatly increase. Now I have reshaped the Devourer Saint body. The innate primordial qi hidden within my body is 1,000 times stronger than that of ordinary people. So even if it is the primal chaos realm, after my spiritual power has merged with the innate primordial qi, my combat power is far stronger than that of an ordinary primal chaos expert. Dealing with the White Tiger Peak Master. Why do I need 7 days? Carefully feeling it, a confident arc appeared on Chu Zhetian's lips. Then, he also crept to little Yeye's room. He had been too intense with Su Ruoyan, and he was also afraid of waking up the little one. However, after entering, he found that his daughter was sleeping soundly. The little one, who had been in a state of anxiety all these days, now had a sense of dependence in her heart after her daddy had returned. Especially last night when she was coaxed to sleep by her daddy, she had never slept so peacefully. Because she was sleeping on her side, a line of crystal saliva was still running down the side of her pink face, and the baby face radiated a gentle innocence. Daddy! In her dream, Yeye was still murmuring her daddy's name. Chu Zhetian's gaze was filled with boundless affection. He carefully wiped the saliva off the little one's face and lightly kissed her on her small face. The little one puckered her lips a few times, turned over, and went back to sleep soundly. Having lived again, though I want to love and protect Yeye as much as possible, I have also angered many people. And even, I have become the target of those who want to get rid of me. This could also indirectly bring disaster to Yeye. I must find a way to make sure my baby is absolutely safe. Chu Zhetian thought to himself. During the day, both Morongling and Bai Yifei had shown killing intent towards Ye. This gave Chu Zhetian a strong sense of crisis. Right, I do remember there is a spiritual treasure that can provide Yeye with an extra layer of protection. However, the place where that spiritual treasure is located poses a threat to gold core experts. With my current strength, I cannot enter easily. That's why I still have to say, I must improve quickly. Seeing that his daughter was sleeping soundly, Chu Zhetian was about to leave and continue to cultivate, to make the most of his time. However, before he could leave Yeye's room, a shout of anger suddenly rang out. Chu Zhetian, get out here. Clang. Following this, was the sound of the wooden door being kicked open violently. Chu Zhetian was startled, and found that his daughter hadn't been awakened, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. Su Ruoyan, what do you want? He cursed inwardly, and walked out with a cold face. After coming out, he saw Su Ruoyan standing in the courtyard. A pair of almond eyes looked at him fiercely as he walked out, and on the exquisite and beautiful face was a cloud of resentment. Chu Zhetian. The woman gritted her teeth and seemed to spit out the name from between her teeth. However, before she could finish her next sentence, Chu Zhetian rushed directly in front of her. A pair of large hands, like that of a grim reaper, directly grasped the slender neck, preventing the rest of Su Ruoyan's words from leaving her throat. Chapter 34. Your petty charms, I don't crave. Shut up. If you wake my daughter, I'll kill you. The cold, domineering voice and the palpable killing intent sent a shiver down Su Ruoyan's spine. She looked at the man before her, and he felt so unfamiliar. That man who had cherished her in the palm of his hand. Where had he gone? Let's talk somewhere else. In the next moment, Chu Zhetian grabbed Su Ruoyan by the neck, and like he was holding a chicken, he hauled her 100 meters away. This behavior immediately made Su Ruoyan feel immense shame and anger. She wanted to struggle and resist, but she was horrified to find that with her half-step innate strength, she was completely suppressed by the other party. The spiritual energy in her body seemed to be unable to circulate. Su Ruoyan was shocked. How could this be? To what level had the strength of this wretched man reached? What's the matter? Speak. After making sure not to disturb his daughter, Chu Zhetian casually tossed Su Ruoyan aside and asked in a cold voice. At this moment, Su Ruoyan, who had originally planned to come and question him, felt that her momentum had weakened. Being hauled over like a chicken, how could she retain any composure? But after all, she was already used to being superior. She adjusted her state, and Su Ruoyan again assumed an aggressive posture. Chu Zhetian, I ask you, did you help my sister break through? Chu Zhetian, hearing this, said with a blank expression, no comment. You. Su Ruoyan was so angry that her teeth itched. Then, she changed her tone and stared directly at Chu Zhetian. Did anything happen between the two of you? Chu Zhetian shrugged again, and his gaze, unwavering, met the other party's. No comment. It wasn't that he felt guilty and didn't dare admit it to Su Ruoyan, but because of Su Ruoyan's reputation. After all, Chu Zhetian was also not sure whether Su Ruoyan would be willing to make their relationship public. Therefore, Chu Zhetian wouldn't be so big-mouthed and publicize the fact that he had done it with Su Ruoyan. That would be too underhanded. If you were just here to ask about this, then you can go back. And don't come bothering me anymore. We have already cut off all ties. At the end, Chu Zhetian's tone was filled with resoluteness and indifference. Hearing this response, Su Ruoyan's chest rose and fell a few times with anger. She looked at Chu Zhetian's back, and her eyes flickered repeatedly. No. Tonight, she couldn't just let it go. Whatever it takes, she had to have Chu Zhetian help her break through to innate. Worst case, she would just deceive him a bit. With her understanding of this man, as long as she spoke a few nice words, and even gave a hint with a finger, he would definitely comply immediately. Chu Zhetian, don't go. I admit I ignored your feelings before, so I now just hope to make it up to you properly in the remaining 7 days, okay? As long as you come back with me to Azure Dragon Peak, I will agree to anything. Is that okay? Saying this, Su Ruoyan went over, grabbed Chu Zhetian's hand, and pressed her entire body into the other party's arms. She even gently removed the clothing from her right shoulder, exposing a hint of shoulder and collarbone. That smooth skin, under the moonlight, radiated a tempting luster. The hint was obvious. Chu Zhetian saw her like this, and a look of disgust appeared on his face, and pushed her away directly. Don't you just want me to help you break through to innate? What is it? You want to use your body to make a deal with me? Su Ruoyan, do you know what you're like now? Like a chicken. That little bit of your charms, leave it for Zhang Beichen to appreciate. Get out, or I'll kill you. With that, he pushed the woman away directly and walked back with large strides. Su Ruoyan's face immediately flushed to a pig's liver color. This wretched man used to be so bewitched by her beauty and had no resistance. Now, when she took the initiative to hint, he told her to get out. This word made Su Ruoyan completely shatter her defenses. Her eyes glared at Chu Zhetian with venom, and she couldn't wait to tear this man to shreds and to vent her hatred. Chu Zhetian, you will regret it someday. Someday. Su Ruoyan gnashed her teeth, and her voice changed tone. In the end, she left Vermilion Bird Peak somewhat dispirited. She had come with great fanfare, but found that she was simply not this man's match. The key was that she could feel that this man really would be ruthless to her. And the beauty tactic had no effect on him. The hard approach wouldn't work, nor would the soft approach. In the end, she could only end up with a dirty face and go home empty-handed. Chu Zhetian, as he returned to his room, his face was full of disdain and revulsion. He never imagined that Su Ruoyan, who had always been above him, would actually use the seduction tactic on him. This simply overturned his understanding of Su Ruoyan. Hee, what proud goddess and cold saint. It was just because she looked down on me before. When the price is enough, this woman probably has no bottom line at all. How did I become so blinded before to be wholeheartedly devoted to such a woman? Tonight, some were happy and some were worried, and some were heartbroken. White Tiger Peak, in the Spirit Hall. Two coffins lay side by side. A graceful and beautiful woman was guarding the left coffin, her expression full of grief. She was Bai Pengju's legal wife, and also Bai Yifei's mother, Zhong Wanlin. In addition to this, Bai Pengju's other concubines and children, grandchildren, and personally taught disciples were also here to keep vigil. Bai Pengju was at Zhong Wanlin's side and said in a deep voice to comfort her, "Don't worry, after 7 days, I will definitely cut off that scoundrel's head and avenge our son." Zhong Wanlin nodded, with red eyes. "At that time, you must dismember him 1,000 times and suffer all sorts of pain. Don't let him die too quickly." Saying that, this beautiful woman's eyes showed deep resentment. "Don't worry." Bai Pengju nodded, and then his tone changed. "Right, that Chu Zhetian's body still contains a myriad transformation spirit root. When he dies in my hands, I will extract this spirit root and use it for Tiaming. It can also be considered as consoling Yifei's spirit in heaven." Speaking of this, his gaze landed on a young man who was kneeling there, keeping vigil for Bai Yifei. His name was Bai Tiaming, and he was their grandson, Bai Yifei's son. Zhong Wanlin nodded, and then reminded him, "The sect master and the second grand elder both think highly of that Chu Zhetian, probably because of the myriad transformation spirit root in his body. You killed Chu Zhetian in the battle of the returning void, and no one can interfere. The only fear is that when you extract the spirit root from his body, the sect master and the second grand elder will interfere. The Azure Dragon Peak Master Su Hongtu may also get involved." Speaking of this, the beautiful woman asked tentatively, "How about you say hello to your grandfather and grandmother and consult their opinions? Grandfather and grandmother are both supreme elders of the sect, and if they support you, everything will come naturally." Bai Pengju heard this and nodded, thinking her words were reasonable. "You are right, wife. I will go and see grandfather and grandmother now." After making a decision, this White Tiger Peak Master made preparations and went to Evergreen Courtyard. Moments later, Evergreen Courtyard. A figure shrouded in a black robe was sitting opposite by Chang'e and Ji Yinlian. Only a few hours had passed since that spirit pigeon had left, but the Dark Knight Palace had already sent someone over. "You mean to launch the plan in advance?" A hoarse voice sounded, carrying a touch of grimness, and listening to it could give you goosebumps. This person was the head Great Witch of the Dark Knight Palace, Night Devil. He possessed the powerful strength of the peak of the 9th level of the Gold Core realm. "Correct. I have had several bad omens in my recent divinations. If we are late, I fear there will be changes." Bai Changqing's expression was heavy. Night Devil Great Witch nodded. "We are ready at any time. When do you want to launch it?" "Then in 1 month, execute the plan." Bai Changqing had made plans in advance and spoke directly at this time. Hearing this, Night Devil opened his mouth to say something, but at this moment, his ears moved. Bai Changqing and Ji Yinlian's faces also became serious. In order to ensure the secrecy of this conversation, Bai Changqing had already set up a formation in advance to prevent others from eavesdropping. However, at this moment, they could feel that someone had touched the formation barrier. "Who is it? Seeking death?" Night Devil asked in a cold voice, and then with a flash, he rushed out of the room. Bai Changqing and Ji Yinlian also followed closely behind. The next second, when they saw the people outside, their brows furrowed. And the Great Witch Night Devil didn't hide his killing intent. The one who ran into his guns was the White Tiger Peak Master Bai Pengju. Chapter 35. Chu Zhetian's Foul Deed? Grandfather. Grandmother. Bai Pengju stood in the courtyard and instinctively greeted Bai and Ji. But then, his expression directly froze there. He looked at the figure in the black robe, and his face was filled with disbelief. Dark Knight Palace, Great Witch? Why would such a terrifying evil cultivator appear at his grandfather's residence? Before he could think more, whoosh! The next moment, the sound of breaking wind sounded. At once, the scene was filled with killing intent. Night Devil Great Witch directly attacked Bai Pengju. "Stop!" He is my clan's grandson, one of our own. Ji Ilian's face changed dramatically, and she urgently stopped him. Hearing this, Night Devil turned around and asked with a sinister smile, "One of your own? Was he part of the plan before?" Ji Ilian's expression immediately stiffened. The members of the plan were all those who were disappointed in the Supreme Void Sect, and Bai Pengju, as the White Tiger Peak Master, was not among them. Although the other party was by Chang'e and Ji Ilian's grandson, they weren't sure that the other party would be brought over. After all, their plan had to be airtight. No? Then he must die. Can you guarantee that he didn't hear our conversation just now? Besides, he saw me appear here. Must not be kept. Night Devil's tone was grim, and his killing intent was even more intense. Ilian, for the greater good. At this moment, Bai Changqing looked at Bai Pengju's eyes, as if looking at a dead man. It revealed a touch of cold ruthlessness. As the words fell, Ji Ilian's expression was uncertain. In the end, she closed her eyes. The smirk on the Night Devil's face suddenly widened. It turned into a black afterimage and rushed towards Bai Pengju. "No! Grandmother! Save me!" Bai Pengju heard this and immediately howled in despair, looking at the expressions of his grandfather and grandmother, filled with unwillingness and grief. After a few breaths, this White Tiger Peak Master's body crashed to the ground. His eyes were wide open, as if he died with his eyes wide open. The next day, throughout the Supreme Void Sect, a piece of news spread like wildfire in the sect. "Did you hear? Senior Brother Chu killed by Yifei, and also proposed a Battle of the Returning Void to the White Tiger Peak Master." Battle of the Returning Void? Isn't he seeking death? The White Peak Master is a primal chaos expert, and Chu Zhetian was only just breaking through to the innate realm when he was at full strength. Chu Zhetian has caused a lot of things these past few days. The upper and lower echelons of the sect were all in heated discussion. Even the outer disciples and the kitchen servants had heard about this Battle of the Returning Void between Chu Zhetian and the Peak Master. In the eyes of the vast majority of people, Chu Zhetian was simply overestimating himself. However, the waves of unrest never ceased. Just when everyone thought that the White Tiger Peak Master would kill Chu Zhetian in 7 days to avenge his son, a sudden piece of bad news fell on White Tiger Peak once again. That morning, below White Tiger Peak, a servant gardener was trimming the flowers and plants here. Suddenly, he tripped and fell to the ground by some soft thing. He was about to start cursing, but when he turned his head and saw what he had tripped over, immediately, he let out a scream that resounded through the sky. Moments later, Peak Master's wife Zhong Wanlin and other people from White Tiger Peak all rushed to this place. Looking at the corpse on the ground, everyone's expressions changed dramatically. That corpse was Bai Pengju. His whole body was black, and his eyes were wide open. His death was extremely tragic. Before his death, it was as if he was filled with endless horror and unwillingness. "Husband!" Zhong Wanlin fell to the ground and threw herself on top of Bai Pengju's corpse and let out a tragic cry. "Father! Master! Peak Master!" The others also cried out in sorrow, as if they were heartbroken. An atmosphere of grief lingered around the surroundings. "It's Chu Zhetian. It must be Chu Zhetian did it." He was afraid that the Battle of the Returning Void in 7 days would have resulted in him dying in my master's hands, so he used despicable means to harm my master. At this moment, Chu Zhetian had arrived at the sect master's manor. After a day of accumulating energy, the spiritual mist in Yushuahan's exclusive cultivation secret room should have almost recovered. He had to admit that the cultivation speed in it was much faster than outside. To say nothing else, he at least had to improve his strength as soon as possible to be able to contend with the gold core experts. If so, he could get that spiritual treasure and obtain a true life-saving card for Yueyue. "Greetings, Sect Master." When he arrived, he saw Yushuahan sitting there, and it seemed that he had been waiting for him. Chu Zhetian quickly bowed and saluted. "You're here?" Yu Shuihan nodded faintly, and that chubby face that looked incredibly gentle seemed to be neither happy nor sad. Then, his tone changed. Zhetian, I understand everything about yesterday's events. I don't blame you for killing Morongling and Bai Yifei, and I have already secretly informed the disciplinary hall not to blame you. After all, these two had invited their own death. However, the battle of the returning void that you proposed with the White Peak Master, I do not agree with. But the die is cast. As the sect master, I won't say too much. Go cultivate, whether you live or die, depends on yourself. The battle of the returning void. Others were not allowed to interfere. Even if he wanted to protect Chu Zhetian, he was powerless to do so. Moreover, his identity was that of the sect master, and he was different from the second Grand Elder Su Beiwang. In this matter, he couldn't take a position. The only thing he could do was to continue to let Chu Zhetian cultivate here. As for the outcome, the sect master could not control it. Yes, thank you, sect master. Chu Zhetian understood and nodded, still expressing his heartfelt gratitude. Ta, ta, ta. At this moment, accompanied by a series of hurried footsteps, a group of people hurried to the sect master's manor. The leader was none other than the disciplinary hall master, He Shoujin. Greetings, sect master. After He Shoujin saluted Yu Shuihan, he said in a deep voice, reporting to the sect master, the White Tiger Peak Master, Bai Pengju is dead. Hearing this, Yu Shuihan's small eyes, which were always unable to open wide, opened. What? The White Peak Master is dead? Chu Zhetian's face also changed, and he was extremely shocked. He Shoujin nodded, and his gaze stared fiercely at Chu Zhetian. Now, Chu Zhetian is the prime suspect. Therefore, this subordinate must take him away for questioning, and I hope the sect master will hand him over. As the words fell, Yu Shuihan's face became serious, while Chu Zhetian's face was calm and sensed a hint of a conspiracy. He had only just proposed a battle of the returning void to Bai Pengju yesterday, and today the other party was dead? Sect master? At this moment, He Shoujin spoke again, and showed Yu Shuihan a look of request. Yu Shuihan pondered for a moment, and finally nodded. The dead was a peak master. The matter was of great importance. Even if he favored Chu Zhetian, he couldn't continue to protect him in this situation. Moreover, this matter was indeed suspicious. Zhetian, you should go with Hall Master He. Cooperate with the investigation to prove your innocence. I will follow this matter personally, and as long as it is not you, no one can wrong you. Yu Shuihan said. Chu Zhetian nodded. Yes, sect master. Chapter 36. A Vicious Woman. Today, the entire Supreme Void sect was in a state of panic. Bai Pengju, what was his status? He was one of the peak masters of the Six Peaks, an absolute high-ranking member of the sect. If such a person died inexplicably, if it wasn't investigated thoroughly, the Supreme Void sect would become a great laughingstock. For a time, all the people in the sect were watching this matter. And because of the battle of the returning void, and was already at the center of the storm, Chu Zhetian was directly put on the fire. In order to give the White Tiger Peak and the entire sect an account, the investigation and questioning of this matter were carried out in a semi-public manner. That morning, disciplinary hall. In the questioning hall, He Shoujin, the hall master, sat high on the hall, his face solemn. Sect Master Yu Shuihan, Great Grand Elder Bai Changqing, Second Grand Elder Su Beiwang, and Fourth Grand Elder Ji Yinlian personally supervised from the side, while Chu Zhetian, as a suspect, stood in the hall. Next to him was the corpse of Bai Pengju. The main hall also seated a group of people who were qualified or necessary to eavesdrop. Zhong Wanlin, the legal wife of Bai Pengju, and a group of people from White Tiger Peak were staring at Chu Zhetian with red eyes, as if they had already determined that the other party was the murderer and wanted to eat him alive. It was worth mentioning that Yueyue also came over with the people of Vermilion Bird Peak by the orders of the disciplinary hall. At the moment, she was being held by Zhang Dalai and was watching her daddy with tears in her eyes. Zhetian, tell us clearly what happened. With your grand ancestor here, no one can wrong you. The second Grand Elder Su Beiwang, at this moment, glanced at the other people and said with anger. He ran over specially to supervise, was just to support Chu Zhetian, afraid that the other party would be treated unfairly. Beiwang, this time the dead was a peak master. The matter is of great importance. Whether Chu Zhetian was wronged will be determined after the hearing. You must not, before then, have a subjective determination. Bai Changqing said with a sharp tone. He and Ji Inlian looked at Chu Zhetian with coldness in their eyes, as if they also saw the other party as the murderer who killed their grandson. But who the real murderer was, they were probably clearer than anyone else. Humph! Su Beiwang snorted coldly and wanted to argue a few more words with Bai Changqing. Chu Zhetian smiled slightly and said, Grand Ancestor, it doesn't matter. Those with a clear conscience are always clear. At this moment, a voice filled with strong hatred sounded. You are the murderer, yet you say you have a clear conscience? Throughout the entire Supreme Void sect, except for you, this dog thief, who would harm my husband at this time? The one speaking was Zhong Wanlin. This woman had first lost her beloved son, and then her husband had died. At this very moment, her hatred for Chu Zhetian was immense. Madam Bai, don't spread rumors without evidence. Why do you think that Zhetian is the murderer? Yu Chaolu immediately sneered and asked with a pout. What do you think? This dog thief had just set up the battle of the returning void with my husband, and Pengji was ambushed. In this world, is there such a coincidence? Moreover, after the investigation, my husband had been poisoned with the Dark Knight Palace's bone-eating powder before his death. And, coincidentally, only Chu Zhetian has connections with the Dark Knight Palace within the entire Supreme Void sect. His daughter, isn't she a demon seed cultivated by the Dark Knight Palace? This dog thief, Chu Zhetian, has definitely colluded with the Dark Knight Palace long ago. So, he was able to get this bone-eating powder. Zhong Wanlin spoke sharply, and these doubts that she had raised indeed pointed the finger at Chu Zhetian. Zhong Wanlin, you are simply talking nonsense. The second Grand Elder angrily refuted. He had a fiery temper, and he couldn't bear the other party's slander of Chu Zhetian. Beiwang, pay attention to your status. We are just here to supervise. How is the truth? Shoujin will have his own judgment. You can't not allow the family of the deceased to state their doubts. Bai Changqing glared at Su Beiwang and warned him coldly. At this moment, Shoujin cleared his throat and said, Now, through various characteristics of the corpse, it can be determined that the time of the White Peak Master's death was yesterday at the hour of 3 to 5 a.m. He should have been poisoned first and then killed. In order to cover up the process of the crime, the murderer caused various injuries to his body, making it impossible to tell which of these injuries were the fatal injuries. Speaking of this, the disciplinary hall master stared at Chu Zhetian seriously. Chu Zhetian, I ask you, where were you during the hour of last night? What were you doing, and who were you with? The hour of Su Ruoyan came to see him last night, and it seemed that it was in the hour of So hearing this question, Chu Zhetian's gaze immediately looked in a certain direction of the hall. There sat Su Hongtu, Su Ruoyan, and Zhang Beichen. They were also qualified to be present as listeners. As for Su Ruoyan, because she had just broken through, she was currently in seclusion to consolidate her realm, and she hadn't received the news to come over. Feeling Chu Zhetian's gaze, Su Ruoyan sneered. On her face, a look of resentment and mockery appeared. Chu Zhetian, now you know you need me? Wretched man, do you regret it? I will intentionally watch you take the blame. Su Ruoyan's inner thoughts were incredibly wicked. Then, she pretended to be clueless and said, What are you looking at me for? You don't want to say you were with me, and I can serve as an alibi for you, right? Hee, don't be so naive. I, Su Ruoyan, am upright. How could I make a false testimony for you? We have already broken off our marital relationship, and why would I get involved with you in the middle of the night? Su Ruoyan only thought that Chu Zhetian was looking at her, wanting her to make an alibi. Thinking of the grievances and insults she had suffered from the other party last night, Su Ruoyan hated him to the core. How could she help Chu Zhetian? Not only would she not help, but she would also have to take revenge on the other party. Watch him suffer the injustice. However, Chu Zhetian sneered and said, "You're overthinking it." He looked at Su Ruoyan, and it was just a subconscious reaction. After all, at that time, the other party was disgusting him with her beauty. But he never thought of letting this woman help him with his alibi. Is that so? That's because you know that this is a vain hope, Su Ruoyan said with hatred. Without paying any more attention to her, Chu Zhetian turned to Xiao and replied, "Last night, at the hour of Yin, I was sleeping." "Who can prove it?" Xiao asked in a deep voice. Chu Zhetian paused for 2 seconds and shook his head. "No one can prove it." But at that time, there were probably 80,000 or 100,000 people sleeping in the entire sect, right? You are not the same as others. You have a direct conflict with the White Peak Master. The hatred of killing your son, the battle of the returning void, any one of these can be a motive for you to kill. Xiao said seriously. Chu Zhetian, stop arguing here. You are the murderer. You, this heartless and despicable villain. Give me back my son and my husband's lives. Zhong Wanlin's voice, gnashing her teeth, sounded again, and was filled with indelible resentment. You were afraid that in the battle of the returning void, you would have died in my master's hands. So you harmed my master in advance. Give me back my father's life. Chu Zhetian, you are an evil cultivator who colludes with the Dark Knight Palace. His daughter is a demon seed, and the daddy colludes with the Dark Knight Palace. Sect Master, Elders, Hall Master he. What else is there to investigate? Just execute him on the spot. White Tiger Peak sighed, had all of their hatred pouring out as they attacked and condemned him, while Yu Chaolu and a few of his personally taught disciples spoke out in indignation for Chu Zhetian. For a moment, the two sides began to argue directly in the hall. All right, quiet. At this time, Xiao slammed his desk and shouted coldly. The next second, he scanned the whole hall and said, "In this matter, the law enforcement hall will conduct its own investigation and get to the bottom of things. And if there is evidence to prove that Chu Zhetian is the murderer, it will naturally execute him. Until then, no one is allowed to interfere." Although he hated evil, and especially hated the demon cultivators of the Dark Knight Palace, but as the disciplinary hall master, he ultimately maintained an impartial heart. Before there was definite evidence, he naturally couldn't, because of the persuasion of the people of White Tiger Peak, arbitrarily condemn Chu Zhetian. Zhong Wanlin snorted coldly and said resentfully, "Isn't it just evidence? I have a good way. As long as she, the fourth Grand Elder, searches Chu Zhetian's soul, then everything will be revealed, right?" This woman stared at Chu Zhetian with a sinister look, and a sneer curled at the corner of her mouth. Saying this, she then stared at Yueyue, like a venomous snake. And also, search his demon seed daughter. As the words fell, everyone in the hall was shocked. Chapter 37, A Crazy Way to Clear the Name. After by Chang'e and Jianlian, another person proposed to perform a soul search on Chu Zhetian, and this time, even Yueyue was involved. Soul searching, this utterly vicious method, Chu Zhetian might be able to withstand with his strong will. But Yueyue was only a 6-year-old child, and once soul searched, she would absolutely become an idiot. What did you say? Hearing Zhong Wanlin's suggestion, Chu Zhetian's originally calm expression suddenly became completely cold. His eyes flashed with killing intent. He looked at the woman with an extremely dangerous gaze and asked with a cold voice, "You don't want to prove your innocence? Soul searching is the best way. You don't dare? What secrets do you dare not tell?" Zhong Wanlin pressed her advantage. "What does that have to do with my 6-year-old daughter?" Chu Zhetian said coldly. "Who knows if she is really 6 years old? The methods of evil cultivators are strange and unpredictable. There are even rumors that there are evil arts to rejuvenate old people. Maybe this little bastard looks like a child, but her soul is actually an old monster who has lived for hundreds of years." Zhong Wanlin sneered. The other people of White Tiger Peak also echoed, "That's right. She is a spy of the Dark Knight Palace. She is a demon seed herself. We must soul search her. Don't dare. That proves that you, father and daughter, are the murderers. Chu Zhetian stared at Zhong Wanlin, and the dangerous light in his eyes became more and more intense. You are courting death. Zhong Wanlin, hearing this, immediately sneered. Why, you dog thief? Haven't you killed my husband enough, and now you want to kill me? Now I am even more certain that you are the murderer. Soul search. Must soul search. I want to make your daughter an idiot. I also want to let you taste the feeling of losing your family. This woman, speaking to the end, was like a mad woman. Her expression was full of resentment and hideousness. Chu Zhetian looked at her, and his eyes also flickered with a fierce light. Since you have even proposed the vicious method of soul searching, then I also have a way that can clear my suspicions. Oh. Xiao, hearing this, immediately raised an eyebrow. The reason why you think I am a suspect now boils down to the fact that you think I am not a match for Bai Pengju and am afraid to die in his hands in the battle of the returning void, right? Chu Zhetian asked coldly. Zhong Wanlin sneered. Isn't that so? Chu Zhetian chuckled. Then if my strength is above Bai Pengju's, do I still need to harm him in advance? As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. Then, Zhong Wanlin sneered. What do you mean? You want to say your strength is stronger than my husband's? Simply laughable. Xiao objectively said, if your strength is above peak Master Bai's, it stands to reason that there is no need to use such methods to harm him. In other words, as long as I prove that my strength is stronger than Bai Pengju's, my suspicion will be cleared, right? Chu Zhetian asked again. Hearing these words, Xiao looked at Yu Shuihan and the three elders. In the end, he nodded, correct. In this case, it will be easy. Chu Zhetian, hearing this, already had a decision in his heart, and the scene descended into a period of chaos. What does he mean? Bai Peak Master is dead. How can he prove it? Is it possible to fight a battle with a dead person? Bai Peak Master was a mixed Yuan level 6 expert, and even if Chu Zhetian was in his prime, he was only at the innate level. Stronger than Bai Peak Master? Simply laughable. Just then, a high-pitched and cold voice sounded. I, Chu Zhetian, appeal to the heavens above and to the supreme void ancestor below, because I have sworn an irreconcilable hatred with Zhong Wanlin. This grudge must be settled. This is a personal matter. To avoid harming the interests of the sect, I am willing to immediately engage in a battle of the returning void with her. To resolve this feud, Zhong Wanlin, do you accept? At the end, Chu Zhetian's eyes looked sharply at Zhong Wanlin. It was as if two sharp swords were pointing directly at the other party. Swish. As these words were spoken, the whole place was shocked. Whether it was the high-ranking sect elders or the people listening, whether it was those hostile to Chu Zhetian or those supporting him, they all showed expressions of surprise and doubt. What? Another battle of the returning void? This time, the target has been changed to Madame Bai? Madame Bai's strength is higher than that of peak Master Bai and has reached the 7th level of the primal chaos realm. Is Chu Zhetian using this method to prove that he is stronger than peak Master Bai? And to engage immediately. And after the shock, Zhong Wanlin, who had come to her senses, had a sneer appear on her face. Want to bluff me? Simply laughable. Since you seek death, then I will fulfill you. I will personally tear you to pieces and avenge my son and husband. This battle of the returning void, I accept. After this woman reacted, she was not surprised but delighted. She couldn't wait to tear Chu Zhetian limb from limb, to vent the hatred in her heart. Didn't expect this dog thief to overestimate himself and come to her door? Buzz. With Zhong Wanlin's acceptance, a wave of cosmic energy suddenly appeared, announcing that this battle of the returning void was a foregone conclusion. The expressions of those present were varied. Expectation, worry, schadenfreude. Zhetian, Is this the way you will clear your suspicions? Su Beiwang said to himself, and his eyes were full of worry. Chu Zhetian, if you win this battle of the returning void, it will prove that you have nothing to do with Peak Master Bai. If you lose, this is also your own choice. At this moment, as the sect master, Yu Shuihan stood up, took a deep look at Chu Zhetian, and announced directly. This time, including by Chang'e, Ji Yinlian, there were no more objections. Half an hour later, in the questioning hall, a spacious area was cleared. Chu Zhetian, who had already released the shackles, stood opposite Zhong Wanlin. Boy, don't disappoint me. I believe in you. Yu Chaolu's voice seemed to be still lazy, but the clenched fists, the nails embedded in the palm, revealed her worry. Zhang Dalai, Zhang Wenshuan, Tang Yitai, and Miao Yume were all nervous. It was no wonder they were worried. That was a primal chaos level 7 expert. Daddy, come on. Yaya also clenched her small fists. Her lovely little face was tensed. Yu Shuihan and Su Beiwang were calm on the surface, but their gazes also didn't leave the field for a moment. Clearly both were worried about Chu Zhetian. In contrast, the side of White Tiger Peak, each and every one of them were sneering. The atmosphere was much more relaxed than here. In their opinion, Chu Zhetian was definitely not a match for the madam. And Su Hongtu, Su Ruoyan, and Zhang Beichen looked at Chu Zhetian's eyes, as if looking at a dead man. Wretched beast, your unrestrained actions and your lawlessness are destined to have today. After your death, I will extract your spirit root and refine it into my body. Su Hongtu said fiercely. Last night, Su Ruoyan, the little girl, didn't mention to Chu Zhetian the matter of having him return to Azure Dragon Peak. But she told Su Hongtu that she had wasted her effort, but couldn't win him back. So Su Hongtu knew that letting Chu Zhetian continue to be used by himself was impossible. At this moment, he hoped that this wretched beast would die on the spot. Chu Zhetian, if you had flattered me last night, there wouldn't be no one to testify for you today. It's all your own fault. Su Ruoyan, in her heart, was also secretly gloating. Junior brother Chu, junior brother Chu, next year today will be your death anniversary. After your death, senior sister Ruoyan will also be able to completely let go of her thoughts. Die. Zhang Beichen was even more venomous than ever. Begin. At this moment, Yu Shuihan took the role of the temporary host in his capacity as sect master and spoke softly. The battle of the returning void was established, and no one could interfere. It could only end with the death of at least one side. Swish. As the words fell, Zhong Wanlin transformed into an afterimage and killed towards Chu Zhetian. The powerful aura of the 7th level of the primal chaos realm, mixed with the terrifying killing intent, instantly filled the entire hall. It could be seen that this woman hated Chu Zhetian to the core. She was already impatient to slash the other party into several segments and avenge her son and husband. And Chu Zhetian also charged out without showing any weakness. His eyes also spewed with a rich killing intent. This woman had helped her son commit murder and was ruthless and hated him to the core. She was even so vicious that she wanted to soul search Yaya. Absolutely, not to be kept. Kill. Chapter 38. The slap comes quickly. Zhong Wanlin charged forward with her sword. Chu Zhetian drew his sword to meet her. The intense killing intent filled the entire hall. Both had a heart to kill each other. Clang. In the next moment, sword and blade collided. Along with the deafening sound of collision, sparks flew in all directions, and the terrifying spiritual energy fluctuation spread outward. It could be seen that Zhong Wanlin and Chu Zhetian each took a step back. Zhong Wanlin's pupils contracted violently, and a deep shock appeared on her face. She was no longer relaxed as before, and Chu Zhetian's face was unchanged, as if he had anticipated everything. Sure enough, Zhong Wanlin of the 7th level of the Primal Chaos Realm is far from being comparable to Bai Yifei of the Innate Realm. I rely on my powerful physical strength, combined with the spiritual power that comes with the Devourer's saint body, and cultivated by the Supreme Tao Scripture, and the 2nd level of the Primal Chaos Realm's Qi condensation stage, to have spiritual power that is purer and more condensed than the ordinary cultivators. These three aspects combined was equal to Zhong Wanlin, a strong person of the 7th level of the primal chaos realm. Chu Zhetian thought to himself, the higher the strength, the greater the gap between each minor realm. Chu Zhetian's chi condensation stage was a whole 5 minor realms, different from Zhong Wanlin. But his physical body was strong, and the quality of his spiritual power was above the other party, and he was just able to hold his own. However, although he couldn't overwhelm the other party, it ignited the fighting spirit in Chu Zhetian's heart, as can be seen in his eyes, as if 2 flames were rising. He stomped his feet and killed towards Zhong Wanlin once again. Even match in raw strength? Then, this woman was doomed to lose. However, after Zhong Wanlin was shocked, she was also full of confidence. Dog thief, so this is your capital for being so arrogant? If that's all, then you will definitely die today. Clang, clang, clang. Next, the two of them fought in one place, and it seemed to be a tough fight. This scene made everyone's eyes widen. The spiritual energy fluctuation on Chu Zhetian's body finally exposed his realm. What? The 2nd level of the primal chaos realm? Can Chu Zhetian really fight head-on with Zhong Wanlin and not fall behind? How is this possible? He had just lost his cultivation, and only 2 days had passed that he reached the 2nd level of the primal chaos realm? This speed of cultivation can no longer be described as terrifying. A burst of exclamations sounded in the hall. Good boy. Ha ha ha. Su Beiwang directly patted his thigh and didn't hide his joy at all. Zhetian really didn't let me down. 2 days to cultivate to the 2nd level of the primal chaos realm. No wonder the spiritual mist in my cultivation room was completely absorbed. This is the potential of the Emperor's star. A smile appeared on Yu Shuihan's face. His already squinting eyes squinted even more. Vermilion Bird Peak sighed. Yu Chaolu's mouth curled up and finally relaxed the nails embedded in the palm of her hand. Zhang Dalai and the other 3 looked at each other. Besides surprise, there was also a deep shock. Junior brother is so strong. He is simply a monster. Oh? Miao Yume took out a spirit fruit and took a big bite, muttering in amazement. Daddy, come on. Only Yaya had no concept of strength, and seeing that her daddy didn't directly cut down that old woman, so she was still nervously clenching her small fists. Her small face was tensed, and she was serious like a small adult. In contrast, White Tiger Peak sighed. The expressions of each one of them varied. The 2 elders, Bai Changqing and Ji Yinlian, had strange and gloomy expressions. And at this moment, Su's father and daughter and Zhang Beichen were also shocked to the extreme. How is that possible? The 2nd level of the primal chaos realm. How could he reach the 2nd level of the primal chaos realm? Chu Zhetian, how did you do it? Su Ruoyan kept shaking her head, and she had no longer the previous schadenfreude and resentment. She looked at Chu Zhetian's eyes, containing all kinds of complex emotions. Shock, doubt, regret, and the inability to accept. This wretched man, after leaving her, not only didn't give up, but on the contrary, became even stronger, to destroy his foundation, but to be able to survive after death? Was it really, in those 5 years, because he was helping her cultivate, that it slowed down his progress? Separating from her, he had gone up to the skies? No. Why? Why? Junior sister, don't worry. Chu Zhetian will definitely not win. Madame Bai has reached the primal chaos realm for who knows how many years, and her strength has long been stabilized. Moreover, at her age, whether it is combat experience or other aspects, she is much more experienced than Chu Zhetian. In the case of equal strength, in the end, it will definitely be Madame Bai who wins. Beside, Zhang Beichen analyzed with a sneer. Su Hongtu also nodded and agreed completely. However, just at this moment, a sudden change happened. After another collision of sword and blade, Zhong Wanlin was cleverly picked by Chu Zhetian, and her gate was wide open. Then, accompanied by a muffled collision sound, Chu Zhetian kicked her heavily in the abdomen. Zhong Wanlin groaned and retreated more than a dozen steps. After standing still, a trace of blood immediately overflowed from the corner of her mouth. What? Zhang Beichen, who was just now so sure that his analysis was spot on, immediately widened his eyes. His face became red and then white, as if he had been slapped several times from across the space. Su Hongtu's expression also became extremely grim. The slap in the face came so quickly. The expressions of the people on White Tiger Peak were also serious to the extreme, while the people on Vermilion Bird Peak burst into cheers. "Daddy is so strong." Yueyue even clapped her small hands and shouted for her daddy at the top of her lungs. On the field, Chu Zhetian, after making a successful attack, took the opportunity to attack fiercely. Zhong Wanlin had a lot of battle experience? Simply a joke. He had lived 2 lives. In his previous life, he was invincible in the world and had fought countless battles. How many times had he walked on the edge of life and death, not knowing how many times he had gained enlightenment in battle? In the case of equal strength, who dared to compete with him? Swordplay nuanced? As can be seen at this moment, Zhong Wanlin's expression was full of shock. From when she had been fighting Chu Zhetian until now, her confidence had been completely shattered. She only felt that every strike by Chu Zhetian was impossible for her to grasp. It seemed that it could always make all kinds of subtle changes, and thus change the situation of the battle. This kind of swordsmanship accomplishment had clearly reached the nuanced level. In Kanglan Continent, the accomplishment in using weapons was generally divided into small achievement, great achievement, nuanced, the state of unity, and insight into the Tao, into 5 realms. Zhong Wanlin was from another sect in Qinglu County, Heavenly Sword Sect. Therefore, she had been immersed in the sword art from a young age. After 60 years, her swordplay had only reached the great achievement realm. But she never expected that Chu Zhetian, at such a young age, had reached the nuanced realm of swordsmanship. Ignoring his raw strength, this directly crushed her in terms of combat skills. Nuanced? Hearing this, Chu Zhetian indifferently pouted his mouth. His swordsmanship in his previous life had reached the highest level, insight into the Tao. It was just that he didn't want to expose himself. To deal with the woman in front of him, nuanced, was enough. Before Zhong Wanlin could catch her breath, Chu Zhetian's attack arrived again in a blink of an eye. She immediately braced herself and held the sword to meet it. At the same time, a hint of venom flashed in this woman's eyes and injected her spiritual power into a wooden token she wore on her person. This wooden token was an attack and kill magic weapon called Shadow Kill. It was a treasure that her father, Heavenly Sword Sect Master, had given her when she married into the Supreme Void Sect. Clang! After another collision, a sudden change occurred. A humanoid phantom suddenly appeared in front of Zhong Wanlin. This phantom was an old man. The old figure, yet emitted an immensely terrifying aura. His hair was all over the place. He held a sword in both hands and transformed into a blade of light, slashing towards Chu Zhetian. The power of this blow had already reached the level of a gold core expert unleashing all of his strength. Not good. Whether it was Su Beiwang or Yu Shuihan or Yu Chaolu and the others, all of their faces changed greatly. And White Tiger Peak's people, as well as Bai Changqing and Jianlian, had a hint of anticipation and a sneer appeared on their faces. Chapter 39. Bai Peak Master wasn't killed by me. Madame Bai was. Faced with an attack comparable to that of a gold core expert, Chu Zhetian stood there, his expression unchanged. He was still wearing the dragon vein golden silk cloak given to him by the second Grand Elder. However, this heaven-grade upper-rank soft armor could only withstand 5 attacks from a mixed Yuan realm expert. Facing an attack of the gold core level, it would shatter instantly. However, he still had a trick up his sleeve. In his previous life, having experienced countless near-death experiences, he had long learned to be prepared for anything and to plan with precision. Crack! A human-shaped pendant hanging on Chu Zhetian's neck was instantly crushed by himself. Then, a humanoid phantom also appeared in front of Chu Zhetian. This phantom looked exactly like him, as if it was a copy. Puff. The next moment, the blade of light slashed on this phantom that was identical to Chu Zhetian. Both immediately disappeared together. A magic weapon? Sorry, I have one too, Chu Zhetian said coldly. Saying that, his gaze subconsciously looked in a certain direction. Seated there was Yueyue. Stinky boy, it's good that you know how to use it. At least you didn't waste my feelings. Yueyue breathed a sigh of relief, and a smile appeared on her beautiful face and nodded to him. What Chu Zhetian had crushed just now was the scapegoat jade child, gifted by this beautiful master of his, which could block an attack below the gold core realm level. Next, Chu Zhetian again launched a storm-like attack. Zhong Wanlin, who was already at a disadvantage, and whose trump card had been used but showed no results, was completely demoralized, and her fighting spirit had faded. With this ebb and flow, Chu Zhetian became more and more fierce, as if the sword god had possessed him. After 10 moves, Puchi, the void-splitting long sword, left a wound that went deep to the bone on Zhong Wanlin's back. After 30 moves, Zhong Wanlin's right arm was cut off at the elbow, and blood spurted. Puchi. Following this, a blade of light pierced mercilessly through her abdomen. Zhong Wanlin screamed and fell to the ground, seriously injured. No, grandmother, mom, senior aunt, madam. From the direction of White Tiger Peak came a series of mournful shouts. Stop! You dare to kill my grandmother! A boy of about 10 years old suddenly stood up and rushed to the field with his eyes split open. He was Bai Yifei's son, Bai Pengju's and Zhong Wanlin's grandson, Bai Tianming. The other people from White Tiger Peak, seeing this, also followed closely behind. They were actually planning to forcefully interfere in this battle of the returning void and help Zhong Wanlin. Swish, swish, swish. Seeing this scene, Zhang Wenxuan, Tang Yitai, and Miao Yume, and a few high-ranking members of the Vermilion Bird Peak who were qualified to be present to watch, also rushed over quickly. They directly blocked in front of Bai Tianming and the others. What do you want to do? This is the battle of the returning void. Others are not allowed to interfere. Tang Yitai pointed at the people of White Tiger Peak and angrily questioned. Get out of the way. Bai Tianming's face was distorted, and he roared through gritted teeth. Get out of the way, trash of Vermilion Bird Peak. Dare to stop us? Do you believe I will kill you? A group of people from White Tiger Peak arrogantly rebuked them. Among the 6 peaks, Vermilion Bird Peak's strength had always been at the bottom. From the peak master, Yueyue, to the several personally taught disciples, they had always been famous for their relaxed attitude. So the White Tiger Peak side was used to being overbearing when facing Vermilion Bird Peak. At this moment, it was no exception. Once the battle of the returning void is established, others are not allowed to interfere, otherwise both parties will be erased by the power of the heavens. You want to see that my senior brother Chu is going to win, so you want to kill him and have him be buried with Zhong Wanlin? What a cruel mind. Miao Yume was so angry that the spirit fruit in her mouth fell out, and her doll face turned red. Today, even if we die, we will never allow you to interfere with senior brother Chu. Tang Yitai directly drew his sword and shouted angrily. Zhang Wenxuan also stood his ground and firmly defended the line. People of White Tiger Peak, retreat immediately. Otherwise, kill without pardon. At this moment, a cold voice sounded. As can be seen, the sect master Yushui Han suddenly stood up, and an aura of a gold core expert emanated from him, locking onto Bai Tianming and the others. And the second Grand Elder Su Beiwang flew over tens of meters and landed directly in front of the people of White Tiger Peak. He had the appearance of being ready to kill at any time. How could he let Bai Tianming and the others make a fuss and harm Zhetian? Feeling the other party's substantive killing intent, Bai Tianming and the others had to retreat unwillingly. On the field, Chu Zhetian, my father and the Heavenly Sword Sect will avenge me. Zhong Wanlin looked at Chu Zhetian like a venomous snake and cursed through gritted teeth. She knew in her heart that she was bound to die, but she didn't beg for mercy. Hearing this, Chu Zhetian sneered, then I will destroy your father and the Heavenly Sword Sect too. Pucci. Along with a blade of light, Zhong Wanlin's heart was immediately pierced. This woman's eyes were wide open and filled with resentment and unwillingness, as if she died with eyes wide open. With Zhong Wanlin becoming a corpse, Chu Zhetian immediately felt streams of heat flowing into his body. The blood wheel eye was automatically devouring the flesh essence in the other party's corpse. And this time, the improvement was significantly greater than before when he killed Morongling and Bai Yifei. His physical strength had increased by a full 50%. It seemed that the stronger the enemy killed, the greater the improvement to the Devourer's saint body. With the blood wheel eye, besides refining qi, I can also take the path of body refinement. Tasting the sweetness of killing and getting stronger again and again made Chu Zhetian's eyes glow with a fanatical light. In this world, cultivation was divided into two paths, which were qi refining and body refining. Except for the demon clan and some special races, the vast majority of human cultivators were qi refining. There was only 1 in a billion cultivators that took the path of body refinement, because body refinement was too difficult. Of course, corresponding to the difficulty was the immense strength of the body refiners. They crushed qi refiners of the same realm. They shattered mountains and rivers with their bodies, changed the color of the sky and earth with their blood, turned their bones into peerless divine weapons, and resisted the heavenly tribulations with their bodies. Not only were their attacks fierce, but their survival ability was even more incomparable to that of qi refiners. When cultivated to the extreme, it was said that they were neither dead nor extinguished. Their vitality was so strong that even if only a drop of blood remained, they could be reborn. As long as I continue to kill, can continuously strengthen my physical body. The potential for body refinement will be incredibly heaven-defying. Chu Zhetian's heart was filled with unlimited prospects. With this battle, at this point, it was settled. The next moment, Chu Zhetian looked around the field, as if his body was also carrying a murderous aura. Finally, his gaze landed on Bai Tianming and the others. Feeling the hatred and resentment in that young man's eyes, Chu Zhetian secretly snorted. This son hated him to the core, and once he retaliated, he would definitely use any means. And he might even start with the people around him. Couldn't be left alive. If there was an opportunity, he must eliminate all roots. People of White Tiger Peak, you listen. Your peak master wasn't killed by me, but Madame Bai was. Each and every one of you, don't look at me like that. If anyone is not convinced, I can also have a battle of the returning void with him. Chu Zhetian snorted coldly and was domineering to the extreme. As the words fell, the people of White Tiger Peak only felt that they did not dare to look at Chu Zhetian. Including Bai Tianming, he also moved his gaze away and suppressed his hatred in his heart. He was afraid that Chu Zhetian would go crazy and also propose a battle of the returning void to him. At that time, whether he agreed or didn't agree. If he agreed, it would be seeking death. If he didn't agree, wouldn't he be a laughingstock? At this time, Yu Shuahan's voice echoed throughout the entire hall. Now, Chu Zhetian has proved with his strength that he can completely defeat the White Peak Master in the battle of the returning void in a dignified manner. So, there was absolutely no need to use underhanded methods to harm the other party. I now announce that the death of the White Peak Master has nothing to do with Chu Zhetian. Does anyone have any objections? As the words fell, there was no other sound in the entire questioning hall. Shoujian, the disciplinary hall master, also nodded silently. Even Bai Changqing and Ji Yinlian could only sit there with a gloomy face and said nothing. Zhong Wanlin's strength was a small realm higher than that of the White Peak Master. Now, Chu Zhetian, in front of everyone, had slashed the former to death with his sword, said that he was afraid of a battle with Bai Pengju, and so he harmed the other party in advance? What was this if not a joke? With this, Chu Zhetian had used this extremely simple and crude, but directly effective method to completely clear his suspicions. But just at this moment, an elder from the Foreign Affairs Hall stood up. The other party looked at Zhong Wanlin's corpse, and a look of worry appeared on his face, and he cupped his hands towards Yu Shuihan. But sect master, Zhong Wanlin is dead. How should our sect explain to the Heavenly Sword Sect? As the words fell, everyone's expressions froze. Chapter 40. Find a way to have him die outside. Heavenly Sword Sect. These 3 words made many of the high-ranking members of the Supreme Void Sect feel some pressure. Besides being Madame Bai, Zhong Wanlin had another identity, the daughter of the current Heavenly Sword Sect master. Now that the other party had died in the Supreme Void Sect, I'm afraid the Heavenly Sword Sect wouldn't let this matter rest. The Kanglan continent was vast and boundless, and the territory of the Great Song dynasty extended for millions of miles. Even a small Qinglu county was also vast. A county had many forces. Not counting those evil sects, the orthodox forces were divided into 3 sects and 2 gates. They were Luo Shui Sect, Moi Sect, Supreme Void Sect, Black Phoenix Gate, and Heavenly Sword Sect. These 5 great forces each had a legacy that spanned more than 1,000 years. And the current Supreme Void Sect was not yet one of the 4 great holy lands of the Great Song dynasty, under the leadership of Chu Zhetian in his previous life. Among the 3 sects and 2 gates, the Supreme Void Sect was the weakest. The Heavenly Sword Sect, because its sphere of influence was adjacent to the Supreme Void Sect, had been in constant friction with each other for hundreds of years, and they had been attacking each other. Until more than 50 years ago, the 2 sects entered into a marriage alliance, which brought about temporary peace. At that time, Yu Shuihan had married his eldest daughter, Yu Xiaoxia, to the eldest son of the Heavenly Sword Sect Master. And the Heavenly Sword Sect Master had also married his daughter, Zhong Wanlin, to the eldest grandson of the Supreme Void Sect's great-grand elder, Bai Pengju. But now, Zhong Wanlin had died in the Supreme Void Sect. This matter was bound to attract trouble. The short-tempered Su Beiwang snorted coldly at this moment and said, "Since Zhong Wanlin had married into our Supreme Void Sect, then it is the internal affairs of our Supreme Void Sect. Why should we explain it to the Heavenly Sword Sect?" Yu Shuihan also frowned and said faintly, "I will write a letter myself to explain the situation to the Heavenly Sword Sect Master." Then, his tone changed, and he looked around the entire hall. Now, everyone has no objections to the fact that Chu Zhetian has cleared his suspicions, right? If that's the case, there is one more thing. We cultivators respect strength. Since Chu Zhetian already has the strength of the primal chaos realm, and has also made great contributions to the sect before. So, I have decided, from today on, to appoint him as a sect's probationary elder and enter the council chamber. From now on, he is qualified to participate in the discussions and decisions on all the major matters of the sect, and enjoys the treatment of an elder. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole place was in an uproar. With the wave of this White Tiger Peak master's death, Chu Zhetian, as the suspect, had not only escaped unscathed, but had also turned the crisis into an opportunity. Everyone looked at Chu Zhetian with various expressions: astonishment, envy, admiration, praise, congratulations. A probationary elder in his 20s? This was practically unprecedented in the Supreme Void Sect. Su Ruoyan's expression looked a little wonderful. The man she had always looked down upon and regarded as a commoner had become a high-ranking sect member at the elder level. Whether it was strength or status, he had reached the same height as her father. For a moment, Su Ruoyan didn't know what the taste was in her heart. If this man was still like before, holding her in his hand and showing her extreme love, then what kind of scene would she, Su Ruoyan, be in? Thinking like this, Su Ruoyan's heart was filled with greater resentment towards Chu Zhetian. This wretched man, why had he suddenly stopped loving her? Now his honor, everything, should have had her share. After a moment, Yu Shuihan let the others leave, and the members of the council chamber were ordered to stay to hold a temporary sect meeting. In the entire questioning hall, there were only some of the core high-level members of the sect, and Chu Zhetian, as a new member of the council chamber, was also seated there. Then, Yueyue showed the authority and majesty of a sect master. He gave a series of orders in a serious tone. The death of the White Tiger Peak Master absolutely cannot be left unresolved. The disciplinary hall must investigate to the end and make sure to find the murderer within 20 days. In addition, the Insight Chamber must also cooperate with the disciplinary hall and conduct a full sect investigation. Find out the internal spies of the Dark Knight Palace who may be in our sect, and dig out all of the nails they have hidden in the sect. Yes, Sect Master. This subordinate obeys. He Shojin and the Insight Chamber Elder immediately responded. Then, Yueyue's expression became even more cold and solemn. This time, the death of the White Peak Master. I am worried that it is a signal for the Dark Knight Palace to implement some conspiracy. So, we must never let our guard down. I order the War Affairs Pavilion to mobilize 10,000 troops from each peak within 3 days to the various branches within our sect's sphere of influence and be ready to guard against the actions of the Dark Knight Palace. Each peak must also cooperate. As soon as these words were spoken, the War Affairs Pavilion Hall Master and the 5 peak masters, Yu Chaolu, Su Hongtu, and others, rose and took the orders. Next, Yueyue issued several more orders. These included reappointing Bai Pengkuan of the Bai clan, that is Bai Pengju's cousin, to temporarily serve as the White Tiger Peak Master. During this meeting, Chu Zhetian didn't express any opinions, but the corner of his eyes occasionally glanced at by Chang'e and Jianlian, these 2 elders. Others didn't know, but Chu Zhetian knew the biggest traitor. Who exactly was it? The sect master is right. The death of Bai Pengju may be a signal of some kind. Could it be that this life, because of my rebirth, some things have changed? The actions of the Dark Knight Palace may be advanced? Thinking about this possibility, Chu Zhetian's heart tightened. A sense of immense urgency seemed to be pressing down on him. That night, Evergreen Courtyard, in a certain secret room, Bai Changqing and Jianlian were sitting opposite each other and were playing a game of Go. At this moment, Bai Changqing stared at a white chess piece, and a trace of viciousness rose in his eyebrows. This chess piece seems to be a little out of control. Jianlian nodded. A chess piece like this cannot be kept. Speaking of this, the 2 looked at each other and saw the killing intent in each other's eyes. Chu Zhetian, the Emperor Star of the Supreme Void Sect? Now, they were forced to believe it. From the Blood Prison Demon Cave, in just 2 days, to be able to cultivate from having lost his cultivation, to the 2nd level of the Primal Chaos Realm. And he could also kill at the 7th level of the Primal Chaos Realm. This speed of cultivation was simply terrifying, and such a level of killing across realms was simply a monster. How long would it take for this man to cultivate to the Gold Core, and even the Yuaning realm? Would he have the strength to change the situation before their plan was launched? They absolutely wouldn't allow this situation to happen. He must die, but we can't let him die in the sect. Bai Pengju's sudden death has already aroused Yueyue's vigilance. Bai Changqing pondered for a few seconds and said, "Then find a way, and have him be transferred away from the sect, and have him die outside. It's best to contact the Dark Knight Palace and have them take action." Jianlian said in a grim tone. To kill him, at least a Gold Core expert is required, and it must be soon. This boy's strength increases day by day, and if we delay any longer, I'm afraid that it will be completely out of control, Bai Changqing said, and his eyes narrowed into a slit. Then, do we implement the plan a little earlier? Jianlian raised an eyebrow, her expression worried. We can't advance it any further. The plan, originally scheduled for a year from now, has been brought forward to 1 month, and has reached its limit. If we advance it any further, various arrangements cannot keep up. Bai Changqing shook his head and said with murderous intent, "As long as we remove this uncertain factor, Chu Zhetian, then everything will be foolproof."